And here we go. Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, let's see. I've called you one of my Mortarks before, so that's already in the tank. But instead, I'm just going to say, probably my own personal graveyard. It's Tom. What's up, buddy?
I will indeed bury you.
Yes.
Hello, friends.
Also joining us this week on the show from the other side of the world through the magic of the internet. Very happy to have him back on. It's the coach, AOS Coach. What's up, brother?
G'day. How are we all, legends? It is Thursday, but it is also Warhammer Wednesday.
That's right. Yes, indeed. So we're going to talk about what we think would fix Legions of Nagash, how we do that, and what we think the new death release that's coming might do to that. There we go. That all made sense somehow. Those were all words that were roughly strung together into a sentence, so seems fine. Okay.
2021.
It's 2021.
All of our problems are solved.
100%. Happy New Year, everybody. Hope you've had a good New Year so far, wherever you are. And we're gonna go through the death stuff tonight. We're gonna have a good time. It's gonna be a little bit of tinfoily hat, a little bit of getting out the scalpel, and going to work on this aging and arguably unfun army book. So
it's like one of the oldest books.
It is. It is one of the oldest books. Yes.
Nurgle being the oldest.
It's certainly the one that's aged the most.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think it has held up the least of all of the books.
Yeah, it's so true.
Which is interesting for reasons we'll talk about later on. But first, the news. So Tom, take us through it.
So news. Rumor Engine.
Yeah, it's a 40k thing. It's probably a new jump pack orc. So cool beans. Next.
So Vince, they heard your cries at GW.
Yes.
And they said, you know what we need? We need a new Night Quester model.
That's right.
For Vince.
That's right. After it got rated as one of the 10 worst war scrolls in the game by me, a model with an average damage of 1 or less, and no actual purpose in the army, they decided to give us another variant of it. Will this one have its own rules? Will it have its own unique points? Probably not. But
you know what I'm excited.
There we go.
You know what I'm excited about?
The new Bulgor sculpt on the model?
Yeah! Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly where I was going.
Beats of Chaos finally getting a new model.
Yes.
Yes. I'm so glad for those beasts.
Mm-hmm. That was what we call low-hanging fruit, Tom. That ripe apple was ready to be picked.
Indeed.
So, yeah, I mean, whatever. I don't like this guy. Anthony, what do you think of this guy?
Yeah. It's another Stormcast champion.
Yep.
Like, I like them. Don't get me wrong, they're cool, but I would love to see something else other than Nighthaunt and other than Stormcast.
They did that once. They gave a Nighthaunt.
Yeah.
They did, and then they quickly kind of retconned that and made it not legal. And then obviously we've kind of like I've still allowed it at tournaments at times, but let's give some love to some other factions.
Yeah, I have mine right over there. I love him. He's great.
Sure.
My Nighthaunt one. I mean, what I would say is this. I like him. I like him more than some of the other Stormcast models we've seen. And
I don't know, man. There's been some really awesome special edition Stormcast.
I agree. There's been some neat ones, but I like this one, honestly.
Yeah.
And I don't know what about it. I think it's just like this one, there's movement in this one. And what I mean by that is like a lot of them are just standing, and he is just standing. But it feels like he's moving forward.
Well, he's in the traditional pose of threat that they model things in. When they don't want to make him too action-packed, that is to say he's forward, his forehead is down, and he's looking up, right? Which is generally like this. It's the angry look, right?
Yep.
And I mean, obviously, his weight is on the front foot, right?
Yep.
So there's all sorts of things about, and his opposing arm is in a a raised position, like a muscle's active position, because he has to be
Yep.
actively holding that thing up.
Yep.
At any rate, I don't like his Mo haircut.
That's
So
fine. Like heads are reswappable.
this is true.
And this will probably come with a head swap. Like most of them come with a helm on, helm off, or sometimes they do.
We do have the greatest weapon known to man coming with it, the axe hammer.
Sure. Knife wrench. Okay, sure.
Who needs a spork when we got an axe hammer?
Yes.
An axe hammer. I mean, it's pretty awesome. That's what I'll say. I'm excited about it, and in fact, like I can't wait to have one of these next month because my store opening is like on my birthday, which is next month. So I'm super excited that I'm gonna pick up some of these.
Sure. I liked when they did the special edition Liberator. I thought she was super cool, just because I like models like that where it's just one amongst the army that you can kind of mix into an existing unit. Like I understand that then you're like taking some regular Liberator and throwing it in the trash or whatever.
Sure, we're gonna do that anyway.
But like, who cares, right? It's still, it makes your unit look really cool and stand out and something different and designates one unit from another. You can be like, oh well, because they might all be painted the same, and this is the problem if like 2 units of 10 Liberators get near each other. You're like, wait, which one's which? Well, you can just be like, put her on the end, and boom, she's the one with her. But anyways, yeah, he's coming to store birthdays near you.
Yeah, you know what I wish is that there were 2 models for AOS and 2 models for 40K that they would do this with.
Sure.
One being like your Stormcaster, your Space Marine, because that's always going to be there. And then the other being another army.
Yeah, sure. And they kind of rotate through the secondary armies. Yeah.
Right. Like I don't care that they do Stormcast all the time. That's great. I would just love like random other models.
Yeah, sure. Some special edition Bestigor or a special edition like a really cool looking Storm Vermin. Like, hey, how about you throw a little love over there, that'd be really sweet. Like a new Claw Lord or something. Whatever.
My fear is that they were like, okay, we're gonna do this. We got all these Stormcast, we're gonna do some Night Haunt now. And then they didn't sell well. I fear that that's what happened.
Right, that's it. It's Stormcast all the way down now, buddy.
Yeah.
All the way
and they're like,
down.
well, we made that mistake. Not again.
Yep.
Stormcast all the way.
Yep. That's what's going to
anyway,
happen.
So that dropped, and I like him. Him, her, they. But it looks great. The model.
That actually might be a worthy call out, just the pronouns as well in the text. So I know a lot of people have been happy about that. So obviously we're talking Legions of Nagash, and we could talk about a whole bunch of things, but it was certainly interesting the language that they used for the model. So kudos.
Sure. Yeah, that's cool. I didn't catch that. That's cool.
Well, it's interesting because they did masculine for the first half of the paragraph and then plural for the second half, and I was like,
yeah,
okay,
interesting.
Yeah. But you're right. So anyways, I like the model. And it will be added to my collection with all the other Stormcast I'm not painting. So other rules or other things. The new White Dwarf, we found the Sons of Behemoth article that's coming out. Isn't new rules. Sorry, gentlemen. I know both of you were super stoked for that. But
Salvation was on the horizon, but no, that oasis was but a mirage.
Ben, how about you talk about what's actually in the article?
It's their rules of engagement thing where they just interview the designer about, so tell us about how you made this brilliant army. Well, it's super awesome. See, here's what I did. And it's like, look, I'm no disrespect to designers. It's a tough job. I never blame the designer. Again, the problem is not the design. The problem is the development. Yada, yada, yada. I've gone on about it. It's a process problem, not a people problem. I stand behind that. But, exactly what I said, like on this show and in multiple other shows, including Coach's show, I said that the problem with this army is very simple. They started with the babies are 10, bigs are 20. That's how they're going to play the objective game, and every bad decision cascaded from that. And they open up the article saying, well, the first thing we had to do was figure out how to make them play the objective game. And we decided that babies would count as 10 and the big ones would count as 20. And then we went from there. It's right there in the text saying exactly what I said. So, yep, you made one wrong decision at the beginning. You never stopped to reconsider because you didn't have a formal development process to go, whoa, this is off the rails. We need to take this back to formula and unwind all this. Okay. And instead, we got the book we got instead of an interesting book.
Triggered.
Hey,
Just straight up triggered.
Yes.
You got your giants. Be happy.
I am happy. I just played him again this weekend and won my game. Like, whatever, you know.
Cool.
It's
There
not.
you go.
My complaint has never been competitiveness. They're fine. They're fine.
Right.
They sit in the fat middle where I said they'd always belong, where I said they'd always be. My issue is that it's a boring book. It's a boring, one-dimensional, inch-deep book. You can.
I was
play...
hoping that
Go ahead.
I was hoping that the White Dwarf would bring a little bit of additional layers, or some ideas, or some, even like an alternate tribe, or some type of battalion that was ridiculous but still a battalion. Another missed opportunity, but hey, it didn't say it was a celestial tome, so we probably got a little bit ahead of ourselves when we saw the information and then realized it wasn't what it was going to be. I think we had a good run. We had Spider Fang, Trogs, and Squigs, and I think as soon as we saw another destruction, we're like, okay, sweet. Probably wouldn't be in Broken Realms. This is their way to incorporate that. So who knows? Maybe there's another one coming in a White Dwarf, but I would have loved just a little bit more.
Yep. I can't wait till they adjust all the giants like 10 points. So the change is now I can buy a command point in all the versions of the army. Won't that be an exciting change? Look out. Okay, cool. Anyways, enough about giants. That's not what this show's about.
We did a show there was this huge reveal on the 1st.
Yes.
And we weren't wrong.
No, it was great. I hope you've all watched the New Year's prediction show we did on Saturday. But what I want to talk about, and the reason I put this in the news, first of all, they were all obviously awesome. I'm very excited about all this stuff. We think everything's super cool. Like, very excited for Witch Hunter. Is it an orc or an ogre? Who knows? There's some kind of cool skeleton guy with a shield. Yada yada yada. Lots of neat stuff.
Or flesh golem. Could be a flesh golem.
Could be a flesh golem. Could be lots of things. But what I want to know is, Coach, what do you think, brother? I want to, because I didn't get a really chance to talk to you about it. What did you think of all the reveals, the teases?
The teasers were quite cool, actually. The first one that kind of stood out to me was Monkey Magic, the flying cloud. So anyone who is older than 10 probably remembers Monkey Magic, the amazing dubbed over television show. At least I had it in Australia as a kid. And I imagine there's going to be an elf, a mage flying on that cloud like Monkey, casting lots of air spells. There's some other cool things I'm very curious to see. So it's funny seeing your predictions come to life. It's great. Like, for me, the Slanesh stuff, the Lumineth stuff, it means I've got another Lumineth show coming, and potentially Witch Hunter, or I know there was some debate whether it's Lord of the Rings or some type of...
It's not Lord of the Rings. Put that away.
No, but there was some debate, like some... when the reveals came up on Twitter, I remember seeing a lot of people, or a few people jumped on saying there's not enough detail. It doesn't look like it's a Sigmar axe. It looks more plain towards a Lord of the Rings. And there was some discussion. I'm on the fence. It's still Sigmar. Whether it's Order of Azir, whether it's Witch Hunter, Chaos Hunter, some expansion to cities, it looks humanesque to me. So I'm really excited, especially as an owner of 140 flagellants.
It's exciting. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a lot of flagellants, more than probably anybody should own, but it's a lot. And I hope you have some way to use them that actually makes sense. So, fingers crossed. Look, it's as easy as a new city. That's like the lowest level, and that's so easy. Like, 3 new kits and a new city with some restrictions, and bing, bang, boom. Like, cities can expand forever and without end.
Well, we've seen such great expansions of cities in the Soulbound narrative, the RPG, and just understanding Brightspear and understanding some of the other cities in Akshi. So that's low-hanging fruit at minimum, let alone developing, cities 2.0.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look in the basic narrative of the sort of book or some of the things where they talk about the maps, or certainly in Soulbound, there's so many other human cities beyond like the 7 cities. And some of them are really, really awesome. And I would love it if at any point in time you just threw a dart at one of those maps. But that dart should land on Adasa. Let me just start there and say that. This is what we want. If I don't get my Witch Hunters, then I want my sweet warrior women with lion pelts and massive greatswords. Because Adasa is awesome. So, anyways, yeah. I agree. Time will tell. But yeah, excited about that. Go back and watch the show if you want to see us, Tom and I, ramble about it for an hour.
So it's interesting because I missed the prediction show because I was on another show at the time, and I caught up to it just after the reveal. So I woke up, saw the reveals, and then made breakfast and watched your show. And it was awesome to see just what you guys predicted, what you didn't quite get right, or what hasn't come yet. And it's a cool parallel. It's a very cool parallel.
Yeah, it was a rare opportunity for us to make predictions and then immediately be partially proven right or wrong. Like normally we have to wait months. So that was good. All right. Tom.
Yep.
Back to you, buddy. This is your part. Now you talk again.
Yeah. Model of the year.
Absolutely. Model of the year. The voting is in, and guess what? AOS, which I was just saying in the notes, it just says we lost again or something like that, or we didn't even make the top three. I don't remember what I wrote in the notes.
Yep.
Well, we didn't make the top three, and Coach, you started a dialogue about this, right? On Twitter.
Yeah, I did. I started a dialogue on the model of the year. It was interesting. So I put out a tweet literally straight after I saw model of the year, and I wasn't having a whinge about 40K winning it again. In fact, 40K taking first, second, and third. And I wanted to understand what drove the winners, what drove people's votes, but more importantly, what would it take for Sigma to be ranked in the top three? And some people misconstrued what I said because I wasn't having a whinge that 40K won it this year. In fact, I think they had so many great models this year, and Sigma probably didn't have as many. So 2020, I think, was definitely the year for 40K.
I mean, Techless wasn't bringing it home.
No, it wasn't. Because Techless was so divided when Techless was first revealed.
Sure.
But when you reflect it, you look at previous years. I think the case for me was Special K Catacross. I looked at what the previous year was, and I think it was a Baton. And I'm like, come on, man, Catacross kicks the crap out of a Baton. But then kind of having a conversation with people and understanding what drove it, it kind of made me realize it wasn't just the model. There's so much nostalgia, but also the size of the community, which obviously plays its part. But it made me wonder. It just made me wonder: will we ever win a model of the year, knowing that nostalgia and the size of the community is behind the 40K? And is it time that we need to break these up? Much like Armies on Parade, where you've got best 40K, best Sigma. Maybe there's a best overall, but at least throw the dog a bone and appoint a Blood Bowl model and a Sigma model in this competition.
Well, it's deeply insulting that we didn't even make the top three. Let me just start there, okay? Like that, and that they threw the pity party with us of the Mega Gargants and the
and Techless. Come on,
getting honorable mention, and not the Light of Eltharion. First off, which is, we all know, the model of that range. Like, come on now. I refuse to believe. I mean, I guess it's possible, but like those were just like, hey, here's some stuff we also thought was cool. They didn't say anything about the votes, right? That those other ones got. So like it's hard. Let me say it this way: it's very hard for me to believe that Techless beat out the Light of Eltharion, but I don't know, who knows. I did think it was funny in the follow-up article where they talked about the releases. They did mention the Mind Stealer Sphere ranks, which I took as when it wasn't just the voting. It was like, here's the stuff we like most from this year, kind of thing, right?
Yep.
So I thought that was cool that they mentioned the cat. But like, yes, this was a weaker year for us, but at the same time, my favorite 40K model of the year honestly wasn't even in the mix. Or wasn't even in the top three, which was Sazerac, or Sazerac, or however you say his name, the Silent King. Like, I think that dude is sweet as all get out with his, like, that's a cool model. But like, the Triumph of St. Catherine is fine. The Citan, the Shard of the Void Dragon, again, yeah, okay. Like, he's cool, I guess. He's fine. And look, real talk, I don't like Gazagul. I don't think, like, I've never liked him. I think I don't like the model. I think he's over-designed. That's the bottom line. There's too much going on there. And I don't find the model compelling. So, that's a personal opinion. If you happen to love Gazagul, then that's fine. But I was always getting killed by orcs. So I was more of a Commissar Yarrick man myself. But anyway.
I've still got Crab Claw Man, Yarrick. He's so great. Old school, like 2-dimensional, like flat guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting for me because I did some before I put out that tweet. I put a bit of research together and went, right, well, who won those last 5 years, and had a look at some of those models. And it's hard to compare. You know, I think at minimum Special K probably should have been up there in a previous year. Marathi probably should be up there in a previous year. I think unfortunately for us, a lot of our great models came at the end times. You know, I'm seeing the chat talk about Archeon, talk about Nagash, talk about all these awesome models.
Archeon didn't come in end times. Archeon came in the December after end times.
Yeah, he was right after.
He definitely, they got the.
He was with the Everchosen.
Right, they got the Bloodthirsters with end times. No,
either way, what I was thinking was just like the amount of models. Like we had a lot of cool models come out previously that also had that nostalgia part that has been driving the 40K victory. That all of our nostalgia models, you know, Tyrion probably is our next one, or maybe Malekith Malarian. That we don't have one that has the popular vote with the nostalgia, with the design, which seems to be the combination that is driving the miniature of the year forward.
Sure. And yes, Martin Orlando. So just real quick here. Yeah, Martin said, "I'm surprised people take it so seriously. It's just a marketing thing." Yes, of course it is. Of course it is a marketing thing. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm with it. I just want to see us take a year because I happen to think we've got better models. But honestly, my answer, coach, is no. We can never win as long as it's combined. It doesn't matter. You could have the coolest thing. We'd get beat by a Primaris lieutenant.
Right. But yes, simply because it's a numbers issue. The way that it currently is they just have more votes that they're throwing into the pool.
Sure.
Like, and we won't win.
Our best hope is for some kind of accidental runoff win, because there's 4 incredibly awesome 40K models that get. Like, here's our best case scenario. There's like 4 awesome 40K models, all just equally mind-blowingly awesome. Okay, but
the keeper of
hold on, but there's only 1 awesome AOS model, so we can all pile on. You see what I'm saying? Like, that draws a majority of the vote. Meanwhile, they're over there splitting all their votes. We got to win. Like, this is a main voting situation before they used ranked choice. That's how we got to win here.
I feel really uncomfortable talking about voting right now, but what I will say is that for the Slaanesh year, did the Keeper of Secrets make final top 3?
I don't remember. I'd have to go look. I legit. It was last year, or not last year. Sorry, it was 2019.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because like I could have sworn that I thought she made top 3.
I do not know. I'd have to go look.
Yeah. In my research, when I was looking at the articles, they only kind of made the top 5. Sorry, the top winners really easy to find. I struggled a little bit to find the others.
Right.
Well, I was just going to say, it's like our hope is greater demons. Anything that crosses the divide.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
We call that. That's ours. It doesn't matter that it can use it over there. That's not real. There's no guns on that. That one belongs to us.
Right.
You keep your war machine, your demon machines. That you guys can have that stuff.
And then finally, talking about models and things going away. Legion of Asgore. Apparently, Vince was right, or is finally right. It's not a real army anymore.
Boom! Gotcha. Take that, Chaos Dwarves, your fake army. You're gone off the Forge World site. So, the trick here being that depending on where you are in the world, there may be more or less of the army still available. Okay, because obviously these things there's like some regionality to it for the major regions. If you have Forge World stuff kept in your country, like we do here in the U.S. or Australia has a Forge World distribution hub, I believe. So whatever, you can have different stuff available in different places. Point is, all the dwarves is gone. Now the question, and by the way, this is not like temporarily out of stock. The question, it says like, buy, this is gone forever, no longer available.
They are no longer available, and people have contacted Forge World confirming, and they said absolutely those models have been retired.
Correct. So here's the question. 1, there are 2 options here. Okay. Australia gets it from the UK. Cool enough. I couldn't remember. I mean, I know that the U.S. has their own Forge.
I was gonna jump in because last night when I heard the rumors, it wasn't true. In Australia, at least, there was only like 1 or 2 models that were out. I woke up this morning and now 3/4 of the range is gone. So
Sure.
maybe it's just an updating system on the various inventories.
Yes. And the key is people have contacted them and they've said these models are retired. Like, we've gotten the confirmation. This isn't a somebody's inferring from something. This has been, these are gone. They are no longer here. And honestly, look, real talk, I wish they would just retire the entire AOS Forge World range.
You shut your dirty mouth. I say that to say
it shouldn't be
if
there.
If there are any models in the Forge World line that you still want, I would buy them now because they will not be there much longer within the broad scheme of things. A lot of those stuff can stay in production for another 6 months. I would be surprised if anything on AOS is there by the end of the year.
Yeah.
With the exception of maybe the Corn Dragon.
Right.
Who knows? Like, I don't know. Like, the reason I say that, and look, I'm not trying to, like, yuck anybody's yum, okay? Yep. The issue with the Forge World Age of Sigmar stuff is it's just not currently relevant. Or, like, they clearly don't care about keeping it with interesting rules. If you've already got it, cool, you can have it. Like, there's nobody doing the rules. There's nobody working to keep this stuff current, okay?
Right.
They're not taken into account as part of the battle tomes. They're not part of the discussion in the same way. They're just these weird hang-ons to a couple of armies and a big group of monsters that have no place or home in the game anymore. They're like relics of a previous time that for some reason are still just sticking around because they're stock or something. Like, none of these things are,
relevant.
Really relevant or part of the armies in check. Probably the two closest to, like, actually being theoretically part of their armies are the Warpnaw Vermin Lord, who generally gets pointed with the rest, and the rock monster of Gorkamorka.
The rogue idol. I would argue that another one that I think is relevant. I think that the alternative sculpt for the Loon Boss on Squig, on Giant Squig, is good. Like, I like that one better than the one that's in the actual store.
Again, that's not needed. You just said the magic words. Alternate sculpt doesn't matter.
But the Colossal Squig is actually a viable, like, a real part that, like, of the Squig thing that has real synergy and actually, like, shows up on tables.
Sure.
It's not in the battalions though. As an owner of 2 Colossal Squigs, however, as well, I'd say the Mongol as well, coming in from Nighthawk and in Legion of Blood, is a good little shout. So, but you're right. Like, when I look at Forge World, and I love Forge World, I have armies that have Forge World models in them and supported. But when I look at, Vince and I were talking about this on my Sons of Behemoth show, where we were like, is there a place for the Bone Grinder Gargant? And I think the answer now is no. There's no longer a requirement. When I look at most of the armies now, there's a subtle replacement. With my Gits, they've pointed out the Rogue Idol, so I can't bring it into my Gits army anymore. But the Colossal Squig, but then I look at my new White Dwarf rules for the Jaws of Mork, and there's no synergy other than the keyword Squig. I can't put them in either, but the cool battalion. So I either want them to integrate them properly, as Vince is saying, or just to remove them. Like, it's frustrating as an army player to, like, not get the full synergies that I really want for such expensive models.
Yeah, two things I'll say. One, people are really defending the Troll Hag. Okay, fine. Like,
sorry.
No, that's a good call. Yeah, like,
how can we forget the Trog Princess?
Yeah, yep.
Because I don't think she's that good. But anyways, yeah, there you go. Sorry, dropping hot bombs here. No, Crazy Horse, the Dreadsaurian is not good. It is in fact quite bad, and anything that's on a base that isn't even printed should be retired from the game. 2, Forge World models aren't good. Like, I'm gonna drop some hard truths here. This is hard truth time. They're not good models. They're bad models, as a matter of fact. Which if you go by anybody else's current casting in resin, you can get beautiful, crisp, incredible casts in resin that are gorgeous, perfect, don't have pits and gaps and weird triangle chunks and every other nonsense thing that those still have. They're like I don't know what their resin process is or why it's so bad, why it's not up to modern standards. GW's plastic standards are the best in the world. They are the industry gold standard. They are what everybody else compares against. Okay? Their Forge World models have very bad quality control. They are like, go buy a good resin bust from some maker, or a 75 millimeter model from Terrible Kid Stuff or Big Child Creatives or somebody like that, and really look at the quality of that resin print. It is on the same level or just about there of any plastic sculpt you can get from GW. It's incredible. Its detail is sharp. It's perfect. It's clean. It doesn't have pits and things like that. It's fantastic. Everything I've ever gotten from Forge World, and I own quite a few Forge World models, despite what I'm saying, okay, has been a freaking nightmare. And there's just no reason for it. So, like, make better models. The fact that they're also higher priced generally, like, they're talking about expensive boutique stuff, right? That is at a lower quality than the plastics you're producing. It makes no sense. If we're going to do this, like, I assume Forge World is just clearing space to make room for the old world, which they're going to have to start ramping up for in 2 years, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, like, fine. Yes, as Crazy Horse said, I can print resin models at my house that are crisper. I don't disagree. If you've got like a high-end resin 3D printer, you can probably beat their quality. That shouldn't be happening. Okay, so like, if you like, I use the term Forge World skin for a lot of these things because they have Forge World skin. Because it has this modeled nature, because it's all they could do, because they knew they couldn't get a smooth cast, so they just gave it this awful, bumpy, gross, nightmarish skin. That is because they knew that it would look all janky coming out of the printer and be fine. Or, sorry, out of the mold. I apologize. Out of the mold and be fine.
They're a product of their time. Like in the 90s when Forge World was a specialist company supporting the Warhammer Fantasy line, they were incredible. I've got Carmine Dragons coming out the wazoo in my display cabinet. I've got, the old Empire handgunners and swordsmen. Love them. Like in the 90s, amazing. But the advancements that we've seen in plastic at Games Workshop now has just blown them out of the water. And with no evolution in resin, it's left in the dark. So I'm kind of okay with it, despite owning so much Forge World. I'm kind of okay with maybe, ripping the Band-Aid off and now looking at evolving the process, hopefully, for new lines.
Yeah, for the old world. Like, get in the new stuff. Get in the new, however you're going to do it. I assume you're still going to use resin. And actually produce something that's quality. And the answer is, look, if the Morngul and the Troll Hag and the Rogue Idol and whatever, if there's like 4 things that are salvageable from that line, okay, because they are functionally useful, great, resculpt them in plastic, put out new cool versions of them. Like, the Rogue Idol was always overcharged nonsense, because I can make the Rogue Idol right now out of pink foam, and it'll be the exact same thing. That is insane that you would pay $100 for a Rogue Idol, or however much he costs. I don't even know how much he costs.
It's a block of resin.
It is.
Hey, I love mine. It was one of the first models that I ever painted. Mm-hmm. It really was.
I understand that.
And I love it.
$112. $112. Literally, I could make this guy out of pink foam. He's a bunch of rocks. That's it. I could go out in my garden and make this guy. Give me a freaking break, okay? But at any rate, maybe I'll do that as a hobby cheating video. Make your own Rogue Idol. Well, I'm going to save you $112 plus shipping. And so, like, take those 4 models, resculpt them in plastic, fold them into the actual line, put them in the books, and shut everything else down. Great. Like, I'm not saying we can't get value out of it. I'm saying right now we're not. Because even the models they are making are of a low quality, they're too expensive, and they're not integrated into the rules in the right way. That's all. Now, back to the original question. We got sidetracked there. Is Legions getting a new entire release, fully recast in plastic, brand new Chaos Dwarves officially entering the universe? Or is the next GHB What about that sweet, sweet, sweet corn dragon crazy horse? He should be taken out to pasture, put in the ash bin of history, and forgotten about. And for the people who have him, I'm sorry. For those 7 people, I
Can
apologize.
I point
Yeah.
out how negative Vince is being right now? Not me. You see me? I'm
Sure.
like, I love Forge World. I love these models.
It's fine.
The show's only going to go up from here, guys. We've got a really cool show
No,
planned.
this is going to be
about
great for the
Legions of
rest.
Nagash.
Absolutely.
And I will. I do want to end the news segment with something positive. So after we do this one, I will drop something really quickly.
Oh, we've got a couple. I've got a couple. We got a couple more things. But yes, okay. Here we go. 1, are they getting a whole new line in plastic? So the Chaos Dwarves officially enter the Age of Sigmar universe with exciting new resculpts and cool things, or are they moving to Legends? Put your money down now, Tom.
They've already been sculpted in plastic. It's called Luminoth Realm Lords. Boom!
Okay, got it. So your argument would be then they're going to Legends. Is that where your money's going, Tom?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, Coach.
I'm torn because we know in Wrath of the
Well,
Everchosen,
listen, Natalie
Cannon
Imbruglia, I know you're torn and she's from Australia as well, but this is the time where we put down our votes.
I'm going to put my chips down.
Okay.
So I was going to, before I put my chips down, Catacross has destroyed the Chaos Dwarf City in Everchosen, Wrath of the Everchosen. So lore, I think maybe that is a reflection of maybe a rebirth that's coming. So I'll put my chips down. The Warcry Warband with Chaos Dwarves in it gives me the indication, much like the Kurnothi, that sometime in the future we are getting Chaos Dwarves 2.0. And hopefully with Hobgoblins again.
All right. My vote is I think it's the obvious answer that they're going to Legends. Okay. They're just going to move them over to Legends. They will go the road of the Tomb Kings and the Bretonnians before them. Now, would I love to see them reimagine that concept in plastic? Like, if you ask me my vote, it's they're going to Legends. If you ask me what I want, and I think this is probably true for all of us, it would be amazing to see this army resculpted in plastic, reimagined for AOS, and to have a real Chaos Dwarf faction would be super cool. Given
Can you imagine a plastic hell cannon?
Yeah, sure. I mean, or the war engines. I love their super cool, crazy iron demons and their war engines. They were so cool. Again,
I love the die.
Yeah,
just fire into elementals, which hopefully Lumineth will bring. But that type of cool aesthetic from the underworld.
Yes, I would love to see.
Will bring them. Don't worry about that.
Sure, I would.
That's going to move over to the lines.
My honest answer is Chaos Dwarves were as much as I joke on them, dunk on them for being a fake army, is that they were pretty Age of Sigmar before there was Age of Sigmar, right? Because they're driving around these steam trains that they're ramming into people. They have these massive artillery pieces, and they all have these sort of advanced guns and stuff.
A flying bull.
Yes, yeah, and they were shoving 2 animals together before it was cool. Absolutely. With the the bull
Salinar is just a Lamasu.
Sure. So my I think it feels ripe. My hope would be, even if it doesn't happen now, that they do eventually return to it, because I think it is a really cool concept and one that would fit actually really well into the Mortal Realms, and in a broader way would be a really interesting Chaos faction, because they do have so much shooting and artillery and other ways to play, and they are more of a mixed force army. This sort of mix of melee. They've got chaff, they've got some shooting, they've got war machines, and you don't see a lot of those in Chaos. Chaos tends to be a lot more single-minded in the nature of their forces. So it'd actually be a cool another item. The only other current one like that in Chaos is obviously Skaven. So, and not everybody likes Ratman. I mean, you should. You're wrong if you don't, but not everybody does. Okay.
It's probably like a 2022, 2023 type army. So I think you're right. It's going to be retired for a good 12, 18, maybe 24 months, just with the way we're kind of going with the release schedule, as you guys have talked about often. But I would probably say, 2 to 3 years time from now, you've probably got a new range of Chaos Dwarves coming.
Yeah. We can all hope.
I could buy that. It's a very natural expansion. We're talking about people ask, can they go on making armies forever? Well, no, but I think there are still some areas of design that like we could very naturally drift into, and I think Plastic Chaos Dwarves, yep,
Yeah, absolutely.
are there.
Yep. So quick other item down below in the news section, down below in the description, you will find a link to a survey about negative play experience. Please go fill that out. If you haven't already, please go complete that survey. It's 6 questions. Number 5 is kind of hard, I will openly admit, because it's a ranking of armies. But even if you're only ranking the top armies, that's fine. That's what we're really interested in. What do you think are the sort of top negative play experience armies? We've had lots of people complete it so far. I'm very happy with the results so far. We're going to keep it open for one more week. One more week. So you still have a week to get it done. But don't wait. You can fill it out now while you're watching the show. Maybe fire that up on another screen while you're listening to us chat about how to fix death, and pop in your answers. It should only take you about 5 minutes. And it's very valuable data. We're going to do a show on NPE in the future. I feel I've already seen and had some great learnings from it. It's very, very interesting data. Make your voice heard, because I want to get as much as possible. There is a lot of varying opinions on this, on the concept of NPE or negative play experience, and everything is interesting to me. So please, 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 fill that out. All right, Coach. What else did you want to say? I'm sorry. You also said
no. Mine's only a small one. I hot off the press this morning, or for me for this morning anyway. The latest Broken Realms article that's coming up probably in the next day or two is very, very cool between Slaanesh and Khorne. So keep an eye out for that new Broken Realms story. There is no love lost between the Blood God and the Dark Prince. When the party of Slaanesh Hedonites is discovered by the Blades of Khorne, bloodshed is inevitable. Now, that's not a cool story, and you don't click that link, I don't know what's going to. So keep an eye out for that one.
Yeah, nice. I will be excited. I haven't read yet, so I'll be excited to read that one. Fantastic. Okay, so with that, let's get into our pick of the week. So, pick of the week. Tom, what would you like to share with everybody?
Why don't we go to our guest first?
Sure. Why don't we go to the guest first? Coach, what would you like to share with everybody?
All right. So normally I shout out a whole bunch of Australian content creators at this point, but I'm going to be selfish because it's my birthday next week, and I'm doing a birthday stream. If you saw my AOS quiz night that I ran just after Christmas, I'm doing another one on my birthday. So Monday for the Australians, everyone else on the Sunday night or Sunday day, depending on what region you're watching us from. But I hope you join me on my birthday to play some Age of Sigmar using the chat function of YouTube, and it's very, very cool.
I watched the previous one, and it was super fun and super cool. I was so impressed by how you managed to work this crazy software, truly pushing the magic of what this medium is capable of. It was great, and a lot of fun. I especially love how very early on a lot of your players, especially in like round 1 and 2, figured out the guy who knew all the answers and would just like wait for him to answer and then copy whatever he said, and you could just like see them filing where they're all just crowding behind this guy. So yes, that was very funny.
So it's all multiple choice. So if you want to come in, have a good laugh, and it's lore and rules across a whole bunch of different factions. You want to hang out on my birthday, come join us for a couple of hours. So and the times are on my channel, so come over.
Yes, I was watching back after you did it live, so I was just answering the questions to myself. And in I think it was maybe the first round or second round, I only got one wrong, but the one I got wrong was prosecutor's hit and wound roll, because I couldn't remember. I could not in my mind justify them being that bad as they are, and I was like, God, how are they that terrible? That feels like not great, especially since I have 18 prosecutors. But anyways, so it was my favorite unit when Stormcast released. I thought, this is the coolest thing ever. This is what I've always wanted.
It's one of the first units that I thought I hacked when the javelins were cheaper than the double hammers.
Sure.
So I quickly went to a bit site, got some javelins, was running my underpowered prosecutors, and then they changed. So good times on that 3d6 charge.
Indeed. for my pick of the week, I'll buy you some more time, Tom.
Oh, I got mine.
Okay,
But
go ahead.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I don't normally spruik you, so I'll spruik you this week. Vince did a wonderful hobby cheating video on alien bases, pulling from some of his Slanesh stuff that he's been doing, and they are beautiful and technicolor and everything that looks like it. Literally, if you do your bases like this, it'll look like Vince painted your models.
It's just that easy, folks. You trick them with the base. That's how we do it. No, thank you, Tom.
So
I
yeah,
appreciate that. They're very nice. No,
That was a really good video. I really enjoyed it.
good. I'm glad. I'm glad to hear it. It was funny too because that the first part of that video is re-recorded footage where I had to like literally just take white paint and paint over all of my finished miniature, including like the tufts and everything. I just had to be like because somehow the recording for the middle part got lost. Oops. Anyways, it happens sometimes. Technological problems. So I recorded the whole thing and I went to compile it. Yeah, and I was like, wait, where's the middle part where I actually put down the initial colors? And I was like, oh, no, that's not here. It got lost somehow. Okay, well, get out the white paint. We do this again. Do it again. All right, so mine.
You could have just done another base, right?
No, because it had to match like all the same stuff, and I would have had to wait hours for it to like make a new base, let everything dry again. I would have to wait more than a day, and I was like in the middle of compiling videos. Okay, my pick is going to be our good buddy Rob, Honest Wargamer Rob, has been doing some breakfast battles this week. He's back on the breakfast battles train, so you can watch a good fun game of AOS on TTS, Tabletop Simulator. Even though I don't particularly want to play on Tabletop Simulator, I like watching games of Warhammer, and it's really fun because both the players are talking very openly about sort of what they're doing, and it's a very fun process. And yesterday, I got to watch a fun game where Owen, who will be on the show later in the month, who's run many TTS tournaments, where Owen ran a weaker version, not my preferred version, but a version of what everyone is now calling Smash Bat. And Smash Bat is my favorite new hero the Mortal Realms needed. It is a Vargulf courtier in Hollowmorn, built to just ramp to the nines, shoot like a missile, like 30 to 40 inches across the board without a stretch, and then hit for like 30 to 40 damage per attack and pile in twice. It's incredible. I love Smash Bat. He makes me so happy. Because this Flesh Eater Quartz version runs no Kumquats, no Ghoul Kings on Terrorgeist, none of the big monsters at all. It uses like the Royal Mordants, so it's all Crypt Flayers and Crypt Horrors and Ghouls, and then the Vargulf Courtier and so on and so forth. And Smash Bat is awesome, and you can have an army with a couple different Smash Bats. Like you'll only have one Super Smash Bat, but then you get Super Smash Bat and Smash Bat if you build it out with the double Royal Mordant. Super Smash Bat! And anyways, it's awesome. And do you want to know how much I like Smash Bat? I thought, what do I have that I could just build this army out of and paint it in 24 hours? Can I do this? What do I got?
What? You all, like, the audience needs to understand, like, I was in the chat when this came up, and, like, Vince almost talked himself into a new army.
So, like I'm already
spot.
this close, Tom. It's
on the spot.
Yeah, because Smash Bat's amazing.
Yeah, it triggers all of his buttons. Like, it's all of the things that he loves.
Buffed, ridiculous monster just going across the board at lunatic speeds, going ah, and just killing everything. It's fantastic.
Vince loves it so much. I woke up one morning to a wall of text this long, just talking about Smash Bat, and I'm like, sleep in my eyes, 6 o'clock in the morning, going, "What is Smash Bash?" I'm trying to work it out. I'm looking at the app. I'm looking at a whole bunch of sites, trying to piece it all together. But it is very, very cool. So, but Vince is absolutely loving it.
Yeah,
I think Vince needs a death army. Like he needs a new army. Well, that's
just it. I don't have a death army. That's just it. I don't know what this death thing coming, as we're going to talk about today.
Right.
But I don't have a death army right now. My only death army was retired when Tomb Kings went to Legends, right? And what I thought was, so I started looking around at like stuff that I have that's just kind of old stuff, and I thought to myself, I have a lot of Bretonnian stuff unpainted still. Like I have a huge Bretonnian army, but I have a lot more than that.
Right.
And these guys are all dead knights, right? That's what they think of themselves as.
So your Smash Bat is Pegasus Knights?
Yeah, Smash Bat and the Crypt Flayers, they're all just Pegasus Knights, right? And the little Crypt Ghouls, because you only need like 20 Crypt Ghouls for this too, by the way.
Yeah, it was mostly horrors and flayers with a double Vargulf.
Correct. In Double Mordant, it's like 20. So the build in Double Mordant that I like is 2 Vargulfs, the Archregent, the regular Ghoul King, 6 Flayers, 3 Flayers, 3 Horrors, 3 Horrors, 10 Ghouls, 10 Ghouls.
Yeah.
And then extra point.
You can tell he's put thought into this.
Yeah, I built out this list to see how many models it is. It's not a lot. This is a perfect 24-hour army project. So, like, the problem is, like, if I actually got the real figs, it would be quicker to paint. Because those are just, like, so easy. Those models are nothing. Like, ghouls and cryptors and stuff are nothing. You can paint those in seconds, right?
I think you know what you need to do.
But if I did them as Bretonnian knights and little, like, peasants and stuff as the little ghouls, I mean...
So, here's what you do, Vince. Here's what you do. You buy a couple, like a handful of getting started boxes for Flesh Eater Hordes.
No, because then you get the big bats. I don't want the big bats.
But you don't have to build that, but just like financially, it's the right call. Like it's the right way to do this. You don't have to build those. You can save those for later. And then you take your outrageous bits box of Bretonnians and all of your undone kits.
Sure.
And you do the ultimate kit bash of undead Bretonnians. And for the Vargulf, who is a terrible model, like an objectively terrible model, you just do Pegasus Knights. And so you do full Pegasus Knights for those. And then you can do so you do a mix of original models, right? And Bretonnian stuff. And you do both.
You just reminded me of another thing we need to fix with death. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Because it's the right way to go. Because it would be beautiful, and you actually have the bits to pull it off.
Sure. I mean, yes, I do. Because I have a very large Bretonnian army that is not like a second whole army, right? And that's fine. The other option there's a couple of different options I was contemplating doing this. The other thing is if I could still find one of the 2020 Battle Force boxes of the ogres, it'd be fun to kit bash all the ogres into the horrors and flayers and stuff. Like put little wings on them because they look like little muscly. They're the right guys and they have the nice shape. And ogres are good for that kind of speed paint type of thing. Anyways, just a thing I was thinking about. We'll see. There might eventually be a video out of it, but we've got Slaanesh coming up, so that's the thing. Anywho. Smash Bat is awesome. So breakfast battles, that was a long way around. Smash Bat's awesome. And check out breakfast battles with Rob. So there you go. Tom, what's your pick of the week? That's right. We're still. Oh, you already did it. Never mind. We're good. Sorry. I mean,
I can spruik your video again if you'd like.
No, it's fine. All right, let's do some hobby time. So hobby time. Tom, what have you been working on? Tom's hobby mojo is back, by the way.
Just gonna jump right in.
Yeah, man, go for it.
We're gonna ignore our guest. Okay, that's fine.
I'm going this way today. Okay, that's what it is.
Fine.
We'll get to code.
It's a circle of life.
Yeah.
I have a hobby confession. I didn't paint a lot of models last year. Like, from start to finish, any models. Like, I painted a lot of models, and Anthony, we talked about this. Like, I painted a lot of models. Like, started a lot of models. 100+ models, at least, that had some paint on them. Over 100 built. I had tons of armies partially built. Not a single model was finished last year. Thanks, COVID. Since the first, I have completed 20 models.
Oh, by the way, can I just say real quick? I just want to say this. That Smash Pad is the creation of Chris Welfare. So I don't want to take credit for that. That was his list, and he deserves. As far as I know, he was the originator of Smash Pad. So and I just wanted to credit the original, the man himself. So sorry, go ahead, Tom. Yes.
Yeah. So I've finished 20 models. Yeah, and so I'm plugging through my backlog, and in the process of I'm moving past most of my KO that have partially painted, and I'm moving on to stuff that I only have base coated. And I may or may not have a very large order of more KO invoiced. So for some reason, I decided in the midst of this I needed more KO. That happened.
Nice. But you're back on You're back on it. Tom's been just doing nothing but putting out hobby progress.
Yep, it's true.
Fantastic.
True.
I'm glad to see it. Now we just got to get you up here and play some games.
It's true.
There you go, Coach. What about yourself? What's been on your hobby table, brother?
So funnily enough, actually, I'm glad that Tom went first because it was Thomas. Always called you Thomas. How wow!
And
Wow. Ways
Dr.
not to
Thomas
get back on the
Lyons
show.
inspired you. Yes.
Ways to not get back into the show, but yes, Dr. Thomas. It was through his frank, open conversation that we had in our little group chat that made me realize that I was very similar. I found that there was a lot of stop start for me until Gargants came out. And there's a project that's been in my display cabinet since 2018. In 2018, I decided it was a good idea to strip my Zench army, my old metal Zench, and then build upon it. So I had the old Lord of Change. I had a whole bunch of like old pinks and blues, and I had my old Screamers and Flamers. And I thought I'm going to strip them and I'm going to build upon them. So I went out and bought what I now own is like 60 blue horrors, 40 pinks, 40 brims, a new Lord of Change. I got all this cool stuff, but they sat unpainted for literally 2 years. So I got off my ass, and this week alone, I've painted 64 blue horrors. I've painted 40 brimstone horrors, and I'm just putting the final touches on 40 pinks. So I wanted to get that out of the way, and then all I've got is my characters left. So, and then I've also been kind of preparing for Armies on Parade. So very, very early stages, brainstorming and collaborating with my elf Partheon, Chuck Moore and Martin Orlando to come up with this idea that I have.
Nice.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
New year, new you.
That's right.
Yeah. If anyone who knows me well, I'm always saying elves are jerks, and the only good elf is a dead elf. But it seems like my Cities of Sigmar is full of elves, and now I have a Daughters of Cain army and a Lumineth army, and I've got these elves. So maybe I'm a changed man. Maybe I am an elven man.
I see no problems with that whatsoever. That's good. For my hobby time, I finished up my Saint Celestine here that I'm working on. She's all done, and I'll share some pictures of her this weekend. I didn't put her on her little base that she normally comes with because I didn't like it. I just wanted her to be her and free floating, not strangely standing on a pile of skulls and candles for no reason whatsoever. I like the idea of her just floating much better. But I'm very happy with how she came out, and she took a lot longer than I thought. She's pretty big. I guess that's part of the issue there. Like, just to really scale that out, here's like a normal chaos dude. So she's big. So that was a lot of fun. This is a very productive hobby weekend. As I mentioned earlier, or hobby week. I got a game in with my Giants. That was fun. The Giants, I'm running the version of Giants that I like, which is all offense and smashy. That came out okay. But now it's time to turn to some chariots, because I got whatever it's Rokar Gresh or whatever that guy is, the 3 chariot box. So I'm just putting together chariots. I've got everything together for 2 chariots. I'm probably going to save 1 to see what I want to do with it. The list I want to run is 2 chariots in there, so making up 2 chaos chariots. I got everything assembled, and get those painted up here hopefully pretty quick. Over the next week or so, should have those done. So lots of very, very productive time. This was a busy week. Okay. Right on. So if you're still watching now, hey all you people, thank you for still watching. While you're here, as we get to our main topic, why don't you hit that like button as we go to talk about how we're going to fix death in the upcoming release. If you haven't already hit like, do so. If you're here and you haven't subscribed yet, hey, do that too. We'd love to have you back. All right.
If you like death, press like. If you dislike death, press like. Let us know where you stand on death.
By pressing like. That would be the key here. That's how we'll know. Don't worry. We'll know which way you voted, even though you hit the same button. YouTube records it, so it's fine. Don't worry about it.
And if you are concerned about it, you can comment below, and let us know
Right.
exactly what you meant by that. Like,
There you go. Exactly. Yes, that would be just for absolute clarity. That's probably what you should.
I'm
do.
watching the numbers go up. It's so awesome. It was like in the 60s. It's jumped to like 90 already, like in seconds. So come on, guys. Crush it.
Good job. Hey, for you 25 people who hit that, you're heroes. If you want to be a hero too, hit like. Okay, enough of that. All right, here we go. So, let's get into it, folks. Okay, so death, Legions of Nagash. How are we gonna fix this, right?
can we talk about why they need fixed?
Yeah. So, yes, we're gonna start there. But actually, here's where I want to start. This is a weird army. Because it's a sort of, what do I say? Like cities or whatever. Tell you what, Tom, you talk for a second. Go. You talk.
Okay. Yeah, so it is a weird army. It's kind of it was early on in the faction like sub-allegiance.
Okay. All right.
Like if you actually go back through and look at the history of the books, it was early in that like divisions, but it has a bunch of
You're hosting
unusual...
for a moment, Tom. I'll be right back. You and Coach carry this.
Yeah, it has a bunch of very unusual kind of auxiliary elements that are just different. Would you agree with that, Coach?
Yeah, it was produced in so the history of Legions of Nagash, and hopefully no one actually is me at this point, is that it was an Age of Sigmar 1 book, tried to be created for Age of Sigmar 2. So right. I remember picking up my Legions of Nagash for the first time, and for anyone who's joined us in the last couple of years, in Age of Sigmar 1, summoning was something you had to pay for in your army list. So if you wanted to bring back a unit of skeletons, for example, and skeletons are 300 points, your army list would only be up to 1,700, and then you'd have 300 points in reserve for summoning. And that would either be for regeneration or for real summoning. And when Legions came out, it still had summoning in a time that we paid points for, and it seemed really weird at that time. And as I look at, please.
I remember, so Nurgle came out right before this, and I remember after reading Nurgle summoning and critiquing it, and then reading Legions of Nagash, I remember making the comment, like if you go back to one of our shows, it really feels like you're not going to have to pay for summoning in the future.
Yeah,
because it was so weak comparatively.
It was super weird and super weak. You're right. Summoning wasn't a viable strategy. I remember I still have my old Flesh Eater Courts. I built a Flesh Eater Courts army as well, and I remember looking at the Ghoul King on Terra guys, and it's like, summon a free unit of horrors. I'm like, who cares? Like, if I want a free unit of horrors, I might as well just put them in my army and guarantee them being there. Obviously now Age of Sigmar 2, that is actually a benefit. So I think when I look at Legions of Nagash and I compare it to some of the older battle tomes, Nurgle, Daughters of Cain, Idoneth Deepkin, these books that haven't been updated for Age of Sigmar 2, they've held the test of times. And I think for me, Legions of Nagash is a pilot. It was the test and learn for Age of Sigmar 2, and we have all reaped the rewards in other battle tomes by expanding upon spell lore, artifacts, sub-allegiances, and the reason I was really excited to revisit this is because it's almost like, cool, now we've learned all this stuff. How do we make this book feel the way it's meant to feel? And I think for me, it just doesn't feel like a death army. And I've had this conversation, one of the administrator of the Death Facebook group is one of my personal and oldest friends, Deke. He is a massive death player. He has like 15, 20,000 points of death. And my issue is that I could build a death army and I could almost transport it in all the different legions. And other than a Mortarch, it's basically the same. It's basically the same.
Like visually, it's the same.
Even the rules to a degree, like there's little tweaks, but it doesn't feel different compared to like what other armies can do.
Really? Because so I think about like Legion of Night is definitely ambushing. and
Sure.
like you don't get that in any of the other Death Armies. You know, and there are like Legion of Blood, like it has some different artifacts. Like obviously all of them have different artifacts. But I agree, largely most of them are playing in very similar spaces. You know, the defining mechanic for almost all of them is the graveyard, the graveyards and returning units, and that's present in all of them, and so they're really not distinct amongst one another. And so this book is probably aged the least well out of all of them.
Yeah.
Nurgle's had help from Wrath of the Everchosen.
Yeah.
Marathi has now had help from, or Doc has now had help from Marathi, and so now, and they've also like received like additional models, or at least Doc has had the supplemental the Iron Scale, and so they've gotten some additions around, but Legions of Nagash has simply had nothing.
Well, if you think about it, Legions of Nagash got no terrain piece. They got no fresh models when the book came out. It was literally just a book and a war scroll.
It's cool.
Like they literally got nothing. They literally got nothing from the release.
Yeah, you got like Lord Vorderai, but again, that was just a new war scroll of a current model, right?
And you got the Palanquin as well, which is literally the same model, just a different war scroll and a build. Like you literally got nothing other than a battle tome and war scroll cards.
Yep, and they had a lot taken away as well. I don't know if we remember that, but they lost like the Vampire Lord on
Abyssal Terror.
Yeah, Abyssal Terror.
Yeah.
They
lost. Soulblight had a whole bunch of rules. Soulblight you could regenerate with the banner, and they lost that.
Kemmler, or better known as Necromancer with Hat. So I mean, they lost a lot of like distinct war scrolls as well with that book.
Yeah, it was a challenge for death players, and I think this is why I'm really excited about this discussion, because like now we've got 2-3 years of learning. How would we bring Legions of Nagash back to life, feeling like Legions? Now that we've also got OBR, they've had. And there's been cool models. Like, you know, what kills me is the Black Coach came out, and they don't have the Black Coach. So I know we're kind of jumping ahead to the.
They have a Black Coach, just not the Black Coach.
And if I'm a new player and I'm going to Games Workshop and I'm like, cool, I want to start a Legions of Nagash army, and there's the Black Coach, and my friendly local game store goes, oh no, sorry, that's not the Black Coach. You get this crappy old metal. And you're like, wait, they're the same thing. Sorry, you don't get it. So I think they've been, and like even something like the store Nighthawk unit, you had it for like 2 days, and then they took it off you. So I think it's time we turn this around and we fix Legions of Nagash, knowing that how influential Vince and Tom you guys are, that we are going to fix this and give the roadmap to Games Workshop to make these guys awesome. And to do so, by the way, I have brought my life-size version of my Sword of Nagash.
Nice. I like it.
And I'm also pulling from one of my tomes of Nagash. So
awesome.
I'm ready.
I thought I was muting myself for everybody, but I wasn't. Apparently, I was only muting myself to you two. And everybody on the stream could still hear my wife saying she wanted to apologize and me saying it's fine. Yeah, the dog.
I didn't hear that. So
yeah, we didn't hear that. Yeah, we had no idea.
It's all good. Yes.
You're not forgiving Kathy. No.
It's yeah. It's fine. It's all good. Dog got the dog. Okay, so had some doggo related issues. So I don't know what you guys already discussed, but I'll assume it was both intellectually stimulating and insightful.
All of the problems with the book and the age of the book and how it didn't age well, and how it's even the sub-factions that are there are not necessarily distinguishable meaningfully, and that the only mechanic was actually one that bridged all of them, and it's equally problematic.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with all that. But, okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about is, I think...
Manfred.
Well, obviously, yes. No, and how he is both the worst, and we should all be grateful to him for giving us Age of Sigmar. Like, here's one thing that I was thinking about as this was kind of being discussed earlier today, is that Legions of Nagash to me, this is the joke I made, right? I said Legions of Nagash to me is the equivalent of like the government dole food package or something you get that's like in a white package that just says the word generic cheese on it. Like it doesn't actually
Yep.
have a brand. It's just the most generic stuff. Some skeletons, and some skeletons with more armor, and dire wolves, which I guess, okay, are undead. Sure, why not? Or whatever. Why not? And some bats, and here is some zombies, and here are vampires. Like, it's so Bobby generic, okay? And my instinct is to go, well, you put all that in the bin and you do something cool with them, okay?
Right.
But I think that's the wrong instinct, all right? I think I would be incorrect because I don't think that's giving these players what they want. I think what the players of Legions of Nagash, the people who are attracted to this army, I think, and I'll be interested to see what the folks in the chat say, but I think that the people who are interested in this army are interested in it because it's a bunch of generic, just undead stuff. Okay? It's like, yep, it's just skeletons. Like, when I said that derisively, they were like, no, that's what we want. Right? Like, what I like is some cool skeletons and some cool stuff like that. Those things are cool to me. Okay.
I want the Castlevania army.
I mean, no,
Well,
because Castlevania is actually cool and has cool monsters in it. Like, I'm sorry. No, you want, like, the Ghosts and Ghouls army.
No, I want the Nintendo, the NES Castlevania army.
I don't even that had different monsters in it, but sure, that's fine. I mean, I guess maybe Castlevania 1, but like Symphony of the Night was not just skeletons and zombies. Okay? Like, yeah, I want the Castlevania army too. The army out of the most recent anime, the anime that's on Netflix, because I want those night beasts or whatever that they make, where the soul crafters or whatever they are, the forge masters, are like banging people into those weird demonic undead things. Like, holy crap. That'd be amazing. I would be in for that stuff. But no, this is like literally just the most generic stuff. Okay? It's just basic, no creativity, the standard, most tried and tested tropes.
You can't say that because you have like the stupid malignant chariot, whatever it's called. I don't know what the big ghost boat.
Okay,
like your Coven Throne.
Yeah, there we go. Coven Throne and the
Mortis engine. Is that
Mortis engine?
Right.
Yeah.
Those are not classic tropes. Like, yes, the stupid, the Death Knights or whatever the horse knight
are just skeletons on a skeletal horse.
Your Hex Wraiths and your Black Knights.
Yes, all of those are just all tropey, and goblins and zombies, and and even the corpse card is kind of tropey. It's a necromancer with a card of zombies.
Yep.
It's very Diablo 2. Congratulations. But like at the end of the day,
No, here's my saying. This is what I'm saying. Look, it is generic. Don't try to defend it like it's not. Okay? It is. It is super generic stuff. It's basic. Okay? It is. But, you know what else is basic? Cities of Sigmar. That's basic. Yeah, basic. It's a bunch of dudes in pantaloons with swords and spears and shields and, stuff like that. And are there some weird things hanging out in Cities of Sigmar? Sure. Sure there are. Right? Like, there's weird Huracanums or Luminarchs or whatever, which is the equivalent to the kind of chariot thing you're talking about, right?
Phoenixes. Yep.
But for the most part, it's basic. Now, my argument would be you keep all of that basic stuff, but you add a little more flourishes like what cities have. Stop trying to be like, I think the answer is not steer away from the basic like I would want it to be, but this army isn't for me. Okay?
Yep.
Like what I came to a realization today in discussing this that that one, this army isn't for me, and two, to properly design its aesthetic, it shouldn't be built for me, right? It should be built for people who want the basic stuff, the most classic, tried and tested tropes. To remove all loaded language from what I'm saying, right? It should be the most long-standing classic Gothic horror archetypes given for, right?
So can I
It's-
put back? Okay, well, go ahead,
Go, Coach.
Anthony.
No, I was just going to say the interesting observation as I'm listening to you, Vince, is that I am a Cities of Sigmar player. I am a Legions of Nagash player.
Mhm.
So there is something here between both of those armies that I really draw from me. And I know when I talk to my game master in Dungeons and Dragons, what draws my excitement is not playing in Far East Asia, not playing in Super Tech Dungeons and Dragons. What draws me is traditional classic fantasy. And I love that. I love the Interview with Vampire. I love all that kind of skeletons and zombies and that type of thing. So I think for me, when I look at this army, I would never want that to be removed. And I think there's an opportunity, as you guys have said. And one thing that I've always hoped for, I hoped OBR would do it, and OBR didn't do it, is we now have all these cool monsters and so many things that have happened in the mortal realms. Give me a zombie or a skeleton Star Drake or a Maw Crusher or these things that you're talking about, Vince. We've now got so many cool new models from Warhammer Fantasy into Sigmar. Let's zombify it. Let's skeletonify it.
Mhm.
Let's undeadify it and put a new lens on Nagash and Shyish.
Yeah.
Well,
And hold on, let me wrap up two things real quick. One, hello, I know my wife is watching. You're fine. It's okay. I'm happy to go get the dog. Happy to help. I love you, dear. And two, I completely agree with that. And you mentioned something there real quick, and somebody else mentioned something in the chat I want to build on. When I say we should build on these tropes, I mean instead of steering, sometimes you get in a skid on ice. The trick is to steer into the skid, right? This is the same thing. We need to steer into this. And we're down in the crevasse. We need to go down. Way down. Okay? So the point is that we should, there's other classic horror archetypes, tropes, that are just very standard that we're missing here. We need werewolves in this mix or something. We need flesh golems in this mix, right? We need mummies in this mix. That kind of thing. Build on the tropification. Make this the true Cities of Sigmar of death, in that it's covering it. With cities, we've got the classic elven tropes, dwarven tropes, and human tropes, right? That sort of standard versions of that stuff. Here's your heavy dwarf armored guy with a shield. Here's your heavy dwarf armored guy with a gun, right? Or whatever, And so cool, we're covering all the basics here. Yeah. And this could be the same thing, but we're missing some of those classic tropes.
so can I jump in here?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So my solution was actually going to be, it's so funny that you guys have came here, because it's very similar to my solution, and on one hand, and very different.
Okay.
With the forthcoming vampire book, okay?
Which might be all death and not just vampires, but sure.
Right. I in my heart of hearts hope that it is.
There we go.
And I hope in my heart of hearts that it is not all death.
Okay.
I hope it's vampy vampires. Okay. And I'm okay if there's minions mixed in there, but I don't want it to be the update to LON. Okay. What I want it to be is I want it to be a distillation of the pure vampire kingdoms style madness. Okay. Of the clans and the based on the Mortarks. And you can have some minions, but then I want my solution was actually going to be that I think the update to LON needs to be something along the lines of Eternal Empires.
Okay.
And it's all of your death aligned, your Shyish kingdoms that Nagash leads. And so, and with that, what you do is basically you double into, basically it becomes Cities of Sigmar for Nagash. in First Shyish. And you have living followers as well as dead followers. You can do everything that needs to be super tropey and in one book.
It's interesting you say that, because that's probably been one of my biggest frustrations with Legions of Nagash. It came out before the Nighthaunt book, and we had a weird alignment and a weird synergy between Nighthaunt and Legions. You don't get all of the Nighthaunt stuff, and we saw that Grimghast Reapers broke the meta at the time, and then we kind of came on years later bringing in Legion of Grief. You then in the lore have in Shyish you have the humans that live in partnership with the underworlds and the spirits of their ancestors. Yet I can't do that with Cities of Sigmar. I can't bring in humans into my death. The other thing that grinds my gears is that all of my skeletons are human. And one of the most imaginative units that I love from Warhammer Fantasy Battles was the Dogs of War. Is it the Lost Legion or the company that was a skeleton unit? Legion. The Damned Legion that had goblins and dwarfs and elves and orc skeletons. And for me, when I say let's bring the mortal realms into Legions of Nagash, that's what I mean. I want to see zombie versions of things. I want to see skeleton versions of things on top of cool new stuff.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yep. So let's have this discussion now, because it's going to frame the rest of what we talk about tonight. Okay.
Yep.
We know there is new death coming.
Yes.
That's not up for contention, right? Between the amazing number of rumor engines, between the images that we saw, right, of clearly some new skeleton with a shield and the dead orc or ogre or whatever he is, and the fact that we're getting this warband that looks like vampirates in March, and the fact that the preview ended with like destruction, decadence, and death was just like, hey, like they can't telegraph it harder, right?
Right.
Okay. So we know we're getting some new death book probably in the first half of the year, right?
Yep.
It was originally going to be sooner, I'm sure, but then, the world happened. Okay. Is this new death book a Soulblight book focusing mainly on vampires? And is that the lens we're going to see it through? That doesn't mean there's not other stuff that gets refreshed or other stuff that's in there, right? Vampires have servants, and you can have other stuff in there. Is this just, though, we take that, we break it out, and we leave Legions kind of there as this weird dangler book that doesn't really seem to have a purpose anymore unless you just want to play skeletons? I guess that's literally the only thing it's doing now at that point, right? So, or is it a refresh of Broader Death? Is it Kingdoms of the Dead? Or something like that, right? The Kingdoms of Nagash, or, you can pick the name you like. You get my point, though, right? Is it a broader refresh? Coach, what's your... That also has, like, a refresh Soulblight within it, right? We get new Blood Knights. We get a couple new vampire kits. Whatever, something like that. But we also get, I don't know, like... a new Flesh Golem kit. Or a new Werewolf kit. And we also get, like, a new... redone zombies. Let's just swing for the fences here, right? Yeah, you get my point.
Yeah. So the issue that I have, and I'm super curious, because there's one of two ways. Do you rip the band-aid? Because it's like your foot's half in the pool. Do I have Nighthaunt in my Legions of Nagash, or are they a separate army?
Yeah.
Do I have Soulblight in my Legions of Nagash, or are they a separate army? You can't really have both, and that's where we've had some problems in the past where, again, Grimghast Reapers being a perfect example, Chaingrass following up, is that we break the book there as it wasn't intended. So I am skeptical that let's say call it Soulblight or Vampirates, whatever this new thing coming.
Yeah.
I'm skeptical that it's a large release. I think it's going to be a small release, and it may be a refresh to Soulblight through Broken Realms, or a mini tome that will then eventually get merged into a larger update to Legions, much like we've seen the expansion on Stormcast with the Excelsius Chamber, and we've seen Khorne get updated with Bloodbound, and then they got re-emerged. Probably how they might do Lumineth when Tyrion comes, and Malekith with Daughters of Cain. So I'm putting my stake in the ground. It's a small release that'll eventually get updated in AOS 3 with a new Legions of Nagash.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Tom, where are you coming down on this?
I think part of this is me wish listing, but I think that this is a new. Okay, how do I want to say this? It is a vampire centric, like it is a soul blight centric book.
Okay.
And I think it will break down along the vampire bloodlines, and along the vampire mortarchs.
Okay.
And I think it will contain a lot of the units that we've seen, but I don't think it will be the new Legions of Nagash. Does that make sense?
Okay. So Legion stays out there as sort of this weird dangler book, is what you're saying.
Yes, and then I think within the year we'll get the other one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you see it as basically they're going to, instead of trying to fix this all with one book, they're going to say, okay, let's not Cities of Sigmar, Seraphon, or Skaven this, because those would be the three all-in examples we have, right? That's what we would point at and go, huge number of war scrolls, mixed, lots of mixed types of units, right? Lots of old inclusions of older models. Like, those are the templates we could go for here, right?
Well, let me remind you, that's what the other book was.
Yeah, I understand. It's the progenitor to all of that. I'm saying they're not going to repeat that, is what I'm saying.
And actually, I think that the history of death has been them backing out of Legions of Nagash.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is this. Legion of Night was like this ambushy, like coming from the night thing. So the first real army that we saw expanded out from Legions of Nagash was Nighthaunt, which took on a lot of the Legion of Night stuff in mechanics. It took on ambushing, it took on bravery debuffing.
Sure.
So a lot of those elements showed up in Nighthaunt, and Nighthaunt became its own thing with its own entire range.
Yep.
And then we got OCR Bone Reapers, which was the expansion. That's your skeletons. Whether you want that to be your AOS skeletons or not, those are your AOS skeletons.
Yeah. Okay.
That's your skeletal army.
But you're playing it different. You're playing Elite versus Horde.
It doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that I think that what they've been doing with the Death books thus far has been backing out concepts into their own books. So Legion of Nagash has served as this umbrella army. And then each Death book thus far has taken a concept that was nascent within the Legions of Nagash and pulled it out into its own thing. Okay. And we've seen that with Legions of Nagash. We've seen that with OBR. I think the next thing we get is the vampire stuff pulled on to stand on its own. And then I think that what ends up happening on the other, like down the road, is you'll get the final piece of that, which is this like the Eternal Empires of Nagash or something like that. Okay. Which is going to be necromancer focused, which will be like living squishy things. So it'll probably be like zombies. It'll probably be werewolves. It'll be the things that aren't vampires, that aren't skeletons, and that aren't ghosts.
Sure.
I'll draw a line in the sand and I'll say I think the complete opposite than Tom. I think you will get a mega book, and I think you legitimize the four legions. So I think you legitimize. I think you merge Nighthaunt into Legions of Nagash. You legitimize Legion of Grief, and I think you make the fifth one using this Soul Blight vampire. It's whatever it might be. So I think you've really flesh out the Mortarchs. Your Blood, your Sacrament, your Knight, your Grand Host, and you build upon it.
Do you really think that they're going to roll Nighthaunt into another book?
And this is where I was talking about the foot being in half the pool. You've got some models like your Spirit Hosts in Legions. You've got your Black Coach, which is not in Legions, but it is in Legions, and you've got these weird synergies. And I'm wondering if they are going to expand upon Death in the future, do they just Cities of Sigmafy it, put it all together, and use keywords and cities to bring it all together and make it easier to manage? And then they focus on new expansions to Death as independent books. I just feel like Soul Blood is still too close to the old vampire counts.
Okay. So my answer of what I think we're gonna get. Okay. So if I were to put my chips on the table of what is this gonna be, I went back before the show, and I reviewed like all of the rumor engines that were death stuff.
Sure.
We talked about it a little bit last month. Okay.
Yep.
And given you never know how many models you're actually dealing with there, you know what I'm saying? Like, because you take a lot of different pictures of legs and arms and weapons and stuff. So you could be like 3 pictures of one model for all we know, right? Okay.
Yep.
But what I noticed was that a lot of it looked like other death stuff than just vampiric. Okay. And there were a couple things that looked either decidedly. So I really reviewed and hoped I would see something that looked very mummy-like. Okay. But I just couldn't find anything in there. I think it's so obvious because you see the bandages, right? So even if they're going to do it, whatever. And I just don't think they've got the guts to do mummies again. I just don't think they're going to bring it back.
They're Blood Bowl. They're a Blood Bowl model now.
Yeah.
Move along.
Exactly.
Well, no, I think they will when they reimagine Tomb King. Like when they truly return to Tomb Kings, when Cetra lives
in like 2028, sure.
Yeah, sure. Like I think that's when they'll do it. Like that will be the AOS. I think it could be in the next 4 years. To be honest, like I think it could be in the next 4 years because you would basically have anywhere between a 8 to 10 year gap from AOS launch to like I think we could get it. Let me say that. I think we could get true mummies in this new thing a couple steps down the road.
Yeah, but when I was looking at this, there were a couple things that looked either ghoulish or deadish or wolfy. Okay, so like there were a couple models that I was like, that could be some kind of werewolf thing or ghouly thing. Okay,
right.
So like that's possible. There's been a couple things we've seen that looked kind of like monstrously undead, like a fleshy thing or something like that. And we've seen a couple things that look like reimagined Blood Knights and stuff like that or whatever, like we think, because we've been saying for weeks I'll plant this flag 1,000 times. I'm absolutely convinced we're getting new plastic Blood Knights. I've said it for 2 months now.
They have to. They're resin. They're fine cast. They are super expensive. Before Dragon Princes were discontinued, everyone bought Dragon Princes to be Blood Knights.
Yep.
Now people are just buying Chaos Knights and getting rid of the markings. It's inevitable.
Yeah. Yep. So when I went back and looked at all of these rumor engines and thought about like, okay, how would I do this? The challenge they're up against, right? They've got some new models the sculptors have made, and it's probably, my point being, it's probably a range across death. If you're one of the sculptors, I could see you going, I would love to reimagine the Blood Knight kit, right? They love doing stuff like that. These classic, like, I don't know who sculpted the original Blood Knights, but they're so, they were meticulous and these beautifully ornate kits. That's exactly the kind of stuff the sculptors love doing. Like reimagining and giving their own spin on a classic kit like that.
Yeah. On those iconic kits. Yep.
Sure. I mean, look at the kits that took top last year and in their honorable mentions was like Ragnar. Right? Ragnar had this old derpy model. It was bad. And when I think Darren Latham is the one who ultimately sculpted new Ragnar, and he loved the chance because it was one of his favorite characters. He had positive memories of the thing. He grew up with him. And this is his chance to, he loves the original. I think Jess Goodman did the original, I think. I'm sorry if I got any of those wrong. But, it was his chance to, bring it to a new generation. And I think that's how they're going to look at a lot of this. Right? So what the sculptors probably delivered is a mix of death, right? Across the board with some new things there that haven't been there before. Okay?
Sure.
Because again, they want to also push into new bounds. They're not just here to literally resculpt what other people did, right? So, if that's the case, which I think it is, just based on the rumor engine and stuff like that, then what are we getting? Okay, my answer is we're going to get a split of the two. Okay? That is to say, when you look at how they divided things originally, They were under the Mortarks, and it was them kind of experimenting with that kind of a concept. But then also they were like, oh yeah, but also here's all vampires, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
And the breakdowns of like death mages and death lords and death, all that crap was nonsensical, right? That was all just did the detritus of our early splits of models into all the Dangler factions. You right?
Yep.
Okay. So my answer is they're looking to reinvent this under the Lords of the Dead.
Yep.
Okay. And because that was already the kind of the idea they had before, they just had this other stuff going on. Okay. So they'll 86 some of the really bad stuff they don't have sculpts for, probably, or that has no real purpose, right? We'll probably lose
dire bats.
Like probably either fell bats or bat swarms will go. I imagine they'll keep one of them because they want to keep that element in there. Maybe we got a new bat type of thing. That could be like I could see them doing a new bat thing. There was a rumor engine that I looked at and thought that could be a weird gargoyle or bat monster. There's one where he's like, yeah, there's like the foot and the arm coming down with like a wing behind it, and I was like, that could be a replacement bat monster, right?
Yep.
So like that could be a replacement.
Like a terrorgeist kind of feel without being a terrorgeist, being that bat aesthetic.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, things like gargoyles are that kind of concept as well, by the way, right? For those sorts of things. Talking about another classic archetypical long-standing trope that's endured, right? And it has this like horror, because again, in my mind, the thing that ties this together is this was my realization as I was thinking about this. Enduring Gothic horror. I think Clint is actually, when as I was talking to Clint, I think he's the one who said those exact words, right? Like it was the Gothic horror aspect, or maybe it was you, Coach. I don't know. It was one of you two who said it, right? And that really clicked with me, right? That's this key. That's this aesthetic. In the same way with cities, it's the weird menagerie of all of the sort of mortal races coming together to defend in all of their classic colors, as it were, right? I mean colors in the broader sense here, right? Not the paint colors, the flying your colors, right?
Right.
That Gothic horror. So I was like thinking of integrating these things. And so what they integrated into is they make the Lords of Death that they have, with Nagash ultimately at the top, right? And then, so like, yes, Manfred, yes, all of that. All of those things are what will sell this and what they would have sculpted toward. My guess is like that's the aesthetic they sculpted toward, was that Gothic horror. And then the book writer said, okay, now how does this organize? It's going to organize with Nagash, like literally like a pyramid. Nagash is at the top, and then you've got each of these things, and it won't be it'll feel like a vampire-y or release mainly with like some new cool monsters, werewolves, gargoyles, stuff like that.
Those were the people in charge.
Yes.
Well, it's a classic.
Exactly.
It's a classic image. Like when this book very first came out, you had this amazing picture where it was Nagash at the top, and then there was the three little icons for the different Mortarks. And for me, that's one of the standing images that I think about, and that organization of. And I know when I was thinking about this, I'm like, I would love someone to betray Nagash. I would love to see what this looks like with new Mortarks. We know that Nagash has, well, in the old world, he had 9 Lords of Death that he was reimagining into Mortarks. I want to see more organization structure under the Mortarks and make them feel more unique in each of the Mortarks, just like how I enjoy Hallowheart, Tempest Eye, Hammerhall. Same models, but I get a distinct feel when I put my models in the different cities. And I'm also incentivized to run different models in each of the cities.
Yeah. I think this will feel... I think you're onto it, right? Okay. So I think the way they'll design this book is something in between cities and Slaves to Darkness. Okay? Because when I say the rulers, there are different types of rulers. Don't think like Manfred or Neferata. That's not what I mean. So, okay?
But this is what you think is coming this spring.
Yes, correct. This is the altogether book. In my mind, the way I thought about it, like, how are these legions, how are these things that are under him split up, right? It's based on the leadership. That's not just the Mortarks. Yes, I understand they're the nominal actual heads of state, okay? But think of the way they do Slaves to Darkness, okay? If it's like there's the Ravagers, which is all about the hordes and having the mortal, non-monstrous human type leaders leading it, right? And you bring a bunch of extra dudes on.
Right.
You've got the Cabalists, which are the wizards and the any the magic users, right? And they're all about like sacrificing their own people to gain bonuses and summon powerful magics, right? And then you've got the Despoilers, which are the Demon Prince led factions, right? You could do that same sort of trope here, but frame it under a more cities like archetype, right? So like you'd probably still use the same names, like the Legions of Blood, okay? And they would have bonuses written into their sub-faction rules or whatever that are bonusing vampires and healing vampires and like blah 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 blah. And this, you know what I'm saying? It would act like that in the same way that Spoilers gives you special abilities to your demon princes and heals your demon princes and yeah. And then you would have another faction that would be like the Cabalists. I mean, these are really close in parallel as I was thinking about it, right? Because this would be the one that focuses on your casters, your people, your necromancers, everything from the lowly necromancer on up.
Right, okay? Which is a Legion of Sacrament. Like, that exists. That's Archon's
exactly,
Legion.
Right? But it doesn't... And so you can still have, like, nominally this is Archon's thing, or normally this is like, in name, my point is, in name, they're that Mortarch's faction, like they had before, okay? But... Yep. They build them smartly, and so that it's not just about having the Mortarch, and that's kind of the situation, right? It's about having the types of leaders that the Mortarch represents.
Sure.
You get what I mean? So the Legion of Sacrament
100%.
is
like tapping into Night, like Legion of Night with more of the White Kings and the skeleton-based stuff. I agree solely.
Yes, this is how you could bridge the gap, right? You 86 some of the old kits, you integrate the new stuff along with whatever you're keeping, and you bridge it, you use the same names, you jettison Soulblight as a concept, because now they're going to have their own faction, right? We're going to make the Legions of Blood the true vampire faction. And one of their allegiance abilities in the Legions of Blood is just bloodlines, right? And that's how we integrate that. And as well, vampires do this extra stuff, and vampires get this, and vampires can summon wolves or whatever, right? I don't care. Like, the point is that's how you build it. Yeah,
it's an incentive structure without pigeonholing. I think that's the key, is that I can still run a Hurricanum in all of the different cities. It's just in Hallowheart it does a little more. Yes. And I think for me that's where, when I look at this, if I build in a certain way in under the different Mortarchs, I should get a little bit more in some of my choices, and it incentivizes without punishing.
Yes, exactly. You can build like a Cabalist's force in Slaves of Darkness without going all in on wizards and still have it be a perfectly functional army. My argument is that's the right way to go here. You organize it like the cities of this, but under the more S2D framework, right?
Okay, so let me just say, I think you guys are out of your mind.
Okay.
If you think chain gas, or if you think hex wraiths, or any of those things are in this book.
No, I don't. Sorry, side note. There was one more addendum I wanted to put on my thing. My big point of disagreement with Coach is we're gonna fire all the Nighthaunt stuff out of this book. It's gone.
So I was gonna do a Tom, and let me be clear, because I did see some stuff in the chat. I think my stance isn't about putting everything into the book. My stance is we need to make a decision if Nighthaunt and Soulblight are in or out.
Right.
We can't have some of the units in the book and some of them not in the unit. It's either all in or we're all out. That's where I stand on that.
Yep.
Well, if that's the case, please understand that we have things that are in other books that could then exclude them from this book. So like Arkan may not show up in this book then, because he's in OBR.
He did show up in OBR. I'm gonna get to Arkan and Nagash in a minute, because I got a bone to pick with those two.
Sure.
See? Okay. But yeah, like, either you fire the Nighthaunt out. They're their own army. Leave them on their own. Period. And like, we've talked about fixing Nighthaunt before, right? Like, they need their own attention. They stand on their own. They've got their own Mortarch. They're their own army. They shouldn't be getting into this army's business other than as allies. Like, obviously they show up on the allies list. Fine. Okay? That's it. But other than that, fire them off the roof. Catacross, he's got his own he's got his own people. All right. The Bone Daddy has got his bone boys. The Sad Lady, she's got all her sad ghosts. Okay. This is for these forces here that remain. Right. They're the most directly under the control of Nagash. All right. That's where I go. That to me seems like the best solution. Right? It kills the old Legions book. It gives them a place to put all these new sculpts. And it thematically lets them do a strong vampire release while still also reinforcing all of the other stuff that mainly work for the vampires, since those are sort of the primary leadership. Right? Okay. So
do skeletons show up here?
The original skeletons, are they still in the book? Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
Yeah, sure. They keep the kit. Yes, because they are classic Gothic horror and people want them. Like that's the answer. And the traditional Gothic horror expands. That's what most of the new kits are. Okay? The only thing that... So instead of pulling other books into this, by the way, let's now talk about Nagash and Arky. Okay? Talk about old Arky. Okay? They're going to have their new... They're going to have scrolls in here. All right? We're going to reprint both of their scrolls in here again. All right? And this time, we're going to get it right.
This
Third
time, it'll be
time's a
different.
charm. Yeah,
This
exactly.
time.
Yes. This time is when we nail it. Okay? And there's no more different scrolls for these guys and all this stuff. Stop it. Stop it right now. There's one Nagash, and he acts like he acts, and we're going to rewrite him like Archeon. The reason Archeon is so cool is because he shows up in one book, the Slaves to Darkness book, and I can put him in 5 armies, at least. Okay? I can build a Slanesh army, and he drops right in. Any keywords, right? I can put him in a Nurgle army, any keywords. He fits, perfect, great. He easily drops in across the board because the way the Chaos factions work. Nagash, and that's because he is the ultimate leader of Chaos Undivided. Right? In the narrative, that's who he is. He is the Grand Marshal of the Apocalypse, the Ever-Chosen, the Three-Eyed King, the Destroyer of the Old World. All right? So, Nagash is the Lord of Death. All these people are his people. Literally, they're all just him. You know, if he... Like, these are all just his puppets. So he gets one scroll, and it has all the keywords of all the death armies of relevance here. Yeah, basically. Probably not Flesh Eater Courts. For obvious reasons.
Nighthaunt?
Yeah, yes. He has the Nighthaunt keyword, and the Osiark Bone Reapers keyword, and he has this new army's keyword. He has all 3 of those. Probably not Flesh Eaters, because they feel better like they're on their own, because they're kind of under
if he had the Nighthaunt keyword, sweet baby Jesus.
Correct. He is the ultimate king. We write him like Archeon. Just like Archeon has the Hedonite keyword, Archeon has all the appropriate keywords to slot right in there. This is the same for him. Nagash has all the appropriate keywords. He can slot in any of these armies. He's one of their heroes as well. He's the big papa daddy of all of them. He is Death Daddy. Okay? And he can just jump into their armies because he's part of that army too. And we write his stupid spellcasting rules and everything else so it just works. He gets all the spells of whatever faction, keyword he's currently in. Or whatever. Okay? Like,
whatever allegiance he is.
Exactly. Yes. Like, I'm not writing formal rules here, but you get the idea. If he shows up in OBR, he knows OBR stuff. If he's in Nighthaunt, he knows Nighthaunt stuff. He's in this book, he knows this book stuff. Right? Because he is Nagash. He is the god of death. Right? And he shouldn't be having 15 different scrolls and not being able to show up in some of his forces and others he can, and like, is he good over here or not here? Like, whatever. Let that be an emergent property of how you want to build that army.
Yep.
Okay? And then he can be worth his 850, 80, whatever we decide to put him at points. Right. And by the way, then you sell a lot more of this kit, GW. Side note, you sell a lot more of one of your more expensive centerpiece kits. So just a cool,
right, because
cool
he can be
bonus
used
there.
in all of your armies.
Correct.
Yeah.
For the same reason, like if you run any kind of chaos, just go buy an Archeon. It's a good investment.
And it fixes
Not
one of
wrong.
the biggest issues that Nighthawk has, which is that all their heroes are squishy, and
Yep.
you lose your general, and especially like your heroes, and it's game over.
Yep.
So you start to really fix, and you start to point not just Legions and Nagash, but you do incentivize and support so much of that army. So I couldn't agree more with what you just suggested. Is stop treating Nagash like Morathi or Alariel. Let's treat him like Archeon, and that should be across the board.
Yeah, because
Man.
he represents that here. He doesn't just have one faction under his control, right? By the way, you mentioned Alariel. If they ever came out with a full Kurnothi army, I would want to see Alariel work the same way.
Agreed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, these gods should be able to show up in these armies. Now, whether it's a good idea to use them or not, that's fine. That's individual army construction and what makes sense, right? Not every Chaos army is like you put Archeon in it at every point in time. That's not always the right answer.
Now, every Nighthaunt army, it is the right answer.
Like with Nighthaunt, Nighthaunt are Nagash's shock troops. Yet I can't actually bring that story to the table.
Yes, exactly. And it just doesn't make any sense. And you're right, it would cover a major weakness of Nighthaunt, and it'd be cool. Like, get him in there as the leader of all the ghosts. Why is there randomly one Mortarch whom he can't show up in the army of?
She's like, no, go home.
Yeah, she's
They're
like,
mine.
they can work together. The Mortarchs can, like, get in a room together and all work. But if he shows up, she's got to leave. Like, what kind of weird situation is going on here? They're like exes or something.
Maybe they are.
Maybe they are. Who knows?
Maybe that's why she's so sad.
Yeah, exactly what I was just thinking. Oh yeah, and it's not like, and to answer a couple things here, Joe McGill said, or he just has his own spell lore that he only uses in whatever army he plays. Yep, I'd be down with that. I'd be super down with that.
Yeah.
If he just brought around like the 8 tomes of Nagash and it was like 8 super cool spells or 6 super cool spells that he had, great. I'd dig the heck out of that. And then we can stop, then we can just cut that middleman out. Yes, that would be great. And Aaron says, I'd rather not see an ethereal Nagash on the table. I'm not talking about him being ethereal. He wouldn't like become ethereal because that's printed on
No, his rules wouldn't change.
War Scrolls. Yeah. I'm like, he's still him. He doesn't become ethereal when he joins up with the ghost people. He's still a big, solid god guy made of bones and god juice or whatever he's made of. But like, he would, fit in that army would be the point, right?
Right.
Yes. W. Soren said Nighthawk can't ally with OBR. It doesn't matter what the narrative said. Yeah. Never mind the fact that in the Wrath of the Everchosen, it's literally those two armies working very closely together and going on a fight together. But sure.
But it shows you that Nighthaunt and Legions are so out of touch compared to some of the other books that the narrative just doesn't align with the rules.
Right. And you could do the same thing with Archon or not, by the by. Like, he could just be mini version of them, because Archon has always been just mini Nagash anyways. He's just like, he's Nagash, but at bargain basement prices. He's just discount Nagash,
That's what he's supposed to be.
Sure,
like,
I understand.
He is.
I'm not disagreeing. Yeah. He's the transmorphers of Nagash. Yes, correct. So, fine. My point is you could rewrite him and do the same exact thing. But he might not have the Nighthaunt keyword, since he's not technically since he is a Mortarch at equal level. Maybe the only other army he shows up in is the Bone Daddies, right? That's fine. So to me, this just feels like the easy slam dunk way to go here. And thank you. Yes, 9 books of Nagash. I said 8 earlier. I apologize. I didn't want to get his book number wrong. But to me, this is just the slam dunk method. Okay. You guys mentioned that grave sites were bad at the top of the show, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, great.
As a mechanic, it's not working.
No. is
even
bad.
even the regeneration of from grave sites is Age of Sigmar 1.0, which was command abilities all came from your general and general only.
Right.
Now, like for me, like even just removing that barrier to entry changes the game. But yeah, I agree. Grave sites, nice try. Let's try again.
Okay. So let's talk about some real fixes here, okay? So we think we've got some new kits coming out. We think we've got some new stuff. We've all got our own vision of what we think this new book is going to be. So you can talk about it in terms of the new book or not, or how you'd want to fix it. Coach, what are the core allegiance abilities of this look like now? How do we turn this around? You know, I'm not asking for rules text, right? Just like conceptually, what does the new core allegiance abilities look like?
For our new vampire part.
Well, for whatever this new book is, right? Whatever you can fix death or talk about it in terms of the new book. I'm okay with either, right? However you envision this thing happening.
Yeah, like for me, I mentioned this a few times that it's about making them feel unique, and you know, I think we all agree here this city slaves type of version of this, and whether that might be just additional rules for different units, how we split things out. For me, grave sites just don't make sense. I would certainly remove grave sites and allow summonable units to return back closer to maybe the general is a bit more generous with 18 inches or something like that. But for me, removing the gravesite and I mean, there's so much summoning right now that doesn't require a point on the battlefield, and the minute you get on top of that battlefield marker, you've denied them. Yet Nurgle, Zench, Flesh Eater Courts, like everyone doesn't have this point on the board. So for me, that'd be an easy win. Would just be drop those grave sites.
And are they just regenning models instead of summoning whole new units back, or are they still summoning whole units back?
I really like the idea of the regeneration. You know, we talked about nostalgia. For me, you know, when I played Warhammer Fantasy Battles, you know, the opponent that I played the most, actually the opponents, you know, shout out to Deke and to Dave, they know who they are. The things for me was that unmovable block of skeletons and zombies that just kept regenerating with a necromancer hiding in it. It was hard for me to target the necromancer, and they would regenerate through either combat slaying or from the hero. So for me, the two fixes that I certainly want to start with would be one, around the regeneration being away from the gravesite. Two, I really like the 40k version of Lookout Sir. I like the idea of not being able to target a model with 9 wounds or less within a certain range of a unit. And I think for something like a necromancer, it's so easy to shut down a necromancer from afar that by bringing that type of rule specifically to a necromancer, when there's a horde of 40 or 60 skeletons and zombies, it shouldn't be easy for me to take out a necromancer supporting them. So not being able to target them, I think, would go a huge way, along with some tweaks to regen.
Okay. All right. Okay. And that's sort of the core, right? Because I mean, I think we all agree that the core of this army should be like necromancy, right? That's the core allegiance ability is necromancy, like raising the dead and doing that kind of stuff, right? That feels like the core concept.
Yeah.
If I in my mind, Legions of Nagash is that classic traditional gothic horror, and you know, we can keep the elites and the shock troops and the other ones into other armies. But to me, the core of Legions of Nagash is skeletons, zombies, and the things that support them. And for me, I wouldn't want to remove that, and I want to kind of really double down, almost like make like the goblins. You know, the goblins are just that unmovable force that just slowly move up the board. It's hard to take them down, but it's not hard to take them down. You take down the necromancer with Van Hal's Dance Macabre. You know, they don't have many heroes. They just crumble really quickly. So I think revisiting that with an alternative would go a long way to bring new list design and keep me to that classic horror.
Okay. Tom, what's your feeling? Where are you putting this?
Yeah, so let me jump on model regen first. I think model regen needs to be at the heart of this army, period.
Yep. Okay.
And
It feels
actually,
like the thing they do, right?
it feels like it should be the thing because that's the whole point, is that death is not the end.
Mm-hmm.
For this army, the core conception is that death is not the end.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, Nagash gives new life on the other side of death. So first and foremost, no matter what sub-allegiance you're in, I think that model regen needs to be the heart of it. And I think it would need to lean much less on graveyards and more on. I'm okay with it being from leaders, like using necromantic energies. I'm also okay with it being from like leeching. Like I would be totally okay if they regen models from killing other models.
Sure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So like you gain models to your unit by putting bodies in the ground.
Yep. Yep.
And in fact, or if you like, I want to get away from the graveyard conception because just like you don't always fight near the front of a Bad Moon shrine, like a Loon shrine,
Sure.
you're not always fighting on graveyards always.
Right.
Okay. But what I would rather see them do is something like this. When a enemy unit is destroyed, put a grave marker in the spot where the last model was killed.
Okay.
And then the raising, like if you have a passive like bonus to your necromantic raising, it's near these graveyard markers where units have died.
Okay. All right.
And that's what I would do if it were me. And I don't hate the idea of returning entire units. I see it problematic on a number of different design levels. I think it's lazy. But if you wanted to do that, I think the fix is the type of fix that we saw with Gloomspite, interestingly enough, which was returning at half strength.
Sure.
I know one of the ideas. Sorry, Tom. Just while it's on top of my head, one of the things that when we had Grimghast Reaper issues, Grimghast Reaper is a block of 30 coming back for one command point. I know that I was really passionate about keeping it, but maybe bringing in the 40k version where you apply multiple stratagems to do a particular thing. And maybe, for me, one of the ideas was, I spend 2 command points or 3 command points to bring back a certain unit, depending on the size of the unit I'm trying to regenerate. So there is something in the summoning.
You're kind of where I'm going to go, Coach.
Yep.
So I think, let me first start with where I'm coming from. Okay. The way the grave sites worked created perverse incentives. And I'm not even talking about just the general thing, the fact that only the general could do it. And so it created this really weird perverse incentive for your opponent to just gun down the general with all the force and fury they could have, right? Because if they could bring down the general, the whole army shut off. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like that's...
take
that, right?
You'd never make a necromancer or a white king a general, because just 5 wounds and you've lost that whole allegiance ability.
Correct. So that created a weird perverse incentive for you to only have very specific types of generals, right?
Right.
Now, secondly, the fact that you could bring a whole unit back for 1 CP, right, was created a different weird incentive, which was only max out your unit size, right? Like, because why would you spend a CP to get back less than the max unit? Right? If you only took 10 skeletons, that's such a waste, because the opportunity cost in your mind fires and you go, oh, that could have been 40 skeletons I got back. Right? At the same time, the third weird perverse incentive in the army was around adding this summonable keyword, which created this like really hard winners and losers.
Right. Things that could be returned and things that couldn't.
Right. Either you were summonable and you were good, or you weren't and you were bad for the most part. Right? Like, that was pretty much the division. If you weren't summonable, you had to punch so far above your weight.
Right.
right? To be like even worth considering.
Yep.
Because you were only going to get one shot compared to the unit of 40 skeletons or 30 Grimghast Reapers or whatever, right? That I knew, hey, guess what? They're back. They get to do it again and again and again, right? So that's the challenges in my mind, right? What we want is we want to have a way to let the undead players feel like they're playing undead, right?
Yep.
That's what they want to do. And the way that you feel like you're playing undead is you keep making more dead, right? The dead grow and increase as the army goes on. They don't get, the longer you fight with an undead army, it doesn't get weaker. It gets stronger, right?
Right.
So, here's my suggestion, okay? I'll openly admit that this probably still needs some refinement, but here's my initial thought. Step one is we use a sort of 40k Necron reanimation protocols, all right, for the dead guys. But it's tied to having a hero wholly within X inches of the unit, with a pretty decent range, probably like 18 or something, okay?
Okay.
And the necromantic we'll call them the necromantic protocols, right?
Sure. Checks out.
Rites of reanimation. There you go, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So everybody that dies and whatever. I don't remember exactly how reanimation protocols works in the new edition, but it's something like whatever. Somebody who's familiar with reanimation protocols could tell me better. But the version I'm thinking of is like you put a bunch of guys down, you roll a die for everybody who you lost at the end of that turn or at the end of battle shock or whatever, right? And on like a roll of 6, we're going to start with this always being pinned to a roll of 6. You get a model back. They stand back.
So kind of like what the Gothazar Harvester does. On the 4+, it brings your Mortek Guard back, but on a different scale.
Yes, but not like that in its weird, dumb rules loopholiness. Where it's happening.
But it's that type of idea.
Yes, because that one's happening live as the models are going down. And it creates this bad rules interaction where it's like you die, you roll a die, a guy comes back. It's just like it's really annoying how that works, right? And so like this is happening at the end of the battle shock. You knock dudes down, they stand back up because there's a hero nearby, right? And it's always on like a 6th. So it's just on like this flat 6 number. And that just handles like your basic guys coming back. Okay. Now you could have individual types of units have bonuses to this roll. Right? Like so you could have like basic zombies or basic skeletons have like a +1 to the roll. So they start standing back up on a 5+ or something like that. You see what I'm saying? So like when you make a reanimation roll for this rites of reanimation roll for this unit, add +1 to the roll. Whatever. Okay. And so it's only happening once, right? It's happening at the end of the round is my point. You take all your dead, you mark them, at the end of the round, guys stand back up. Okay. Now, okay, cool. Yeah, so Joseph said how it works is you pull the models and then roll equal to the wounds profile of everything that died, provided a model is still alive in that unit. Okay, cool. So, then the other question is, what if a unit is totally wiped out? All right, and by the way, the trick with this rites of reanimation is it's working on that I'm proposing here. And again, if this isn't exactly like Necrons, I don't care. I'm not trying to remake Necrons, right? I'm trying to make a.
But it's an example of
exactly. Like I'm using this as a concept. Okay. So that then, and somebody said, is it somewhat like FEC? Yeah, a little bit. FEC kind of works like this, right? And with FEC, it's like some of the courtiers, they all get to roll. It's kind of different values, and 2+ you can return ghouls, and 5+ you can return the big guys, and whatever, right? Yada yada. But that happens in the hero phase, and it's cool. Like, but this is kind of similar, right? And we don't need summonable for this because it's just happening, right? And I don't care if it's a Blood Knight or a whatever. You roll the die. On a 6, a guy comes back. You're on elite units, you'll get less rolls. So if you get one back, it's more valuable, right? And then what you've got is buried in the allegiance ability. You have an ability just called Summon Undead. Okay? And you trigger it, maybe something like the Ravagers or maybe something like that, where you can spend a command point once or twice around to get to summon a basic unit, 10 or whatever of these guys, of this list. This discrete list of things has nothing to do with what was in your initial list, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the it's not. So let me address Grungavaldi. He said it's worse deathless minions. It's absolutely not. Okay, because one, I'm not taking away deathless minions. They still have their deathless minions. Feel no pain. 2, even though it's on a 6, I'm suggesting that the units could have bonuses that are appropriate for them. Okay. And you can then play with that mechanic. So, for example, if you're in the Legions of Blood, and that's like your whole big thing, and it's a vampire-focused thing, you could make a rule like Blood Knights get +3 to their Rites of Reanimation roll in this army.
Mortis Engine might support it. Arcane type build could then give you pluses or extend the range. I like the idea. That feels death without... Yeah, that feels death to me. Like when I think about my Dungeons and Dragons or even Warhammer Fantasy or even just what I see in the movies, it's this undying horde, as you said, that gets stronger and stronger as more bodies are amassed.
Right. And so what the heroes have for the old summoning, instead of like your graveyards are gone. Instead, they can just summon basic undead, and that's just a command point, right? And they can do so. Maybe there's some kind of limit on it. Maybe there's some kind of, I don't know what the balancing mechanic is. I'd rather it not be some kind of currency you have to build up, like the chaos summoning. Right? Mm-hmm. I feel like it's summoning basic units of like 10 skeletons or 10 zombies or basic dire wolves, like the stuff vampires summon or undead leaders summon, right? They stand up 10 zombies. And the idea would be then they can just bring them on. Now, alternatively, you could also have the rule that if one of these units exist, you may just spend the command point to add the 10 models directly into that unit or whatever, right? So, and there you go. Now you've done like the summoning from nothing, but you also have this, okay? By the by, to feed to your point, Tom, of killing stuff should make you stronger, right?
Yep.
On something like the Rites of Reanimation, it could be fed with a bonus if you wiped out a unit or did wounds to an enemy unit in the combat phase or whatever. Like, that's another way you could do it. In addition to, by the way, just saying, like, if this unit slays any enemy models... Yeah, add a D6 models to it or something like that, right? You could actually have that happening, right? Sure. So, but if you're standing up, if your basic summon is 5 direwolves or 10 skeletons or 10 zombies or some fell bats, I don't know, whatever the basic crap is, right? That's easy. Then great, you have a cool summoning mechanic. It's as useful and as game-breaking theoretically as something like the Ravagers are, right?
Right.
Where it's a cool ability, but it's not the defining trait of the army. You've got guys that you can put them down easy, but they keep getting back up, right? Because their numbers keep growing through this Rites of Reanimation. And then you can tool the Rites bonus to each unit and each subfaction where appropriate. If this is the one that's good at, like, if the Magic Necromancy one is the one that's good at, like, just churning out undead, then they're getting big bonuses with skeletons and zombies.
Sure.
What comes to my mind, and I don't know if this is similar or different to yours, Vince, but I think about the Slann and I think about sacrificing a spell cast to kind of tap into those portents. I wonder if it's the necromancers sacrificing their spell cast in order to tap into that death magic to reanimate.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's just so much potential there. And some people have been talking about some other ideas. Joseph said, I'm not super familiar with AOS, but would multi-wound normal zombies be absurd? No, I think it'd be cool. I would love monstrous zombies. I hope we get monstrous zombies at some point in time. I love the idea of ogre zombies or big things like that. I think that would be sweet as all get out. It'd be super easy. Like, you could have it as a shock troop unit. It's not hard. I mean, we already have close versions of that in things like crypt horrors, which are big ghouls, ogre-ish ghouls. So why not have ogre-ish zombies?
Do they keep their death save?
Yeah.
Just death in general.
Yeah. Yes.
Is it still tied to heroes being nearby?
Yes.
I think ultimately that's a good idea to tie it to that. But you know what? But here's the thing. I wouldn't go to the mattresses for that. Like, my preference, yes, a big bubble. Does it need to be? Honestly, no. If it was just a straight 6-up, and it's always a 6-up and there's no way to bonus it, if there are 0 bonuses to that in the book, okay?
Yep.
Which is how most of these should be written, by the way. We need to wheel back on this feel no pain crap. I don't like I am a longtime hater of Hagnar and everything about it. Okay?
I am not.
Yeah, I understand. But the because you like broken cheaty stuff that's not fun to play against. But the like just having that 6-up, I mean, okay. I mean, Daughters of Cain have a 6-up all the time. I don't feel like just having that 6-up is breaking the bank in any way. Okay, that's cool. Like, yeah, they're just dead things that are often very resistant to damage. So, yes, it's hard to kill them. That's what the 6-up represents, right? Like, there's always a chance you just hit something that wasn't important in them, even when you did a wound.
There's no vital organs to take down a zombie or a skeleton.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, okay, cool beans. So to me, no, it doesn't have to be tied to the heroes. I guess I'd probably rather it be, but I don't need it to be. I would say based on what the other allegiance abilities are in total is my answer to that question.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out like how much of this is actually different like than what is currently there.
Well, I think those return mechanics are very different.
Mm.
I mean, yes.
Because it gets rid of all the perverse incentives.
It also seems to be a lot of accounting as well. Like, how many bonuses do I get? What are my pluses for returning? Yada yada.
Like, I mean, one, you're not totally wrong. I don't completely disagree with you. Two,
I'm just coming at it from a development point of like it seems really complicated.
I think for the most part, I could get a version of it that's pretty simple. Because if we're talking about like most units are on a 6, they probably don't have a bonus built in, or they have one bonus built in either from their subfaction or on the scroll. This is my number. And you're going to know that number because it's always that number. Right? You're not actually accounting and bookkeeping. They have a static number.
Mm.
Blood Knights in this faction have a static number they are hitting. It is less complicated than Tzeentch bookkeeping, certainly a lot less than Slaanesh bookkeeping, which is very bad. It's not even like Lumineth Realm Lord's bookkeeping in Sayer or something.
Right.
Like, because the number's the number. The bonuses come in list building, not in the game where you're tracking something. Right? And there's a difference between the aggregation of numbers in list building and the aggregation of numbers in game.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. I think I am just coming at it from I think what we have coming is going to be fundamentally, on one hand, different than Legions of Nagash, where what I'm hearing from both of you is that the book that is forthcoming is Legions of Nagash 2.0.
No, not necessarily. I think I'm looking at this at a lens of fixing Legions of Nagash, not preparing what I think is going to be this upcoming book. If I think about what I think this upcoming Vampirates or Soulblight is going to look like, I think it's all being tied into bloodlines like we had in the old Vampire counts. I think we're getting an increase on the armor save of a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. I think we get mount traits for things like Zombie Dragons and Terrorgeists. I think we get high armored shock troop, probably very similar to a like a Lord on Kakadrak with Chaos Knights and Varangard. That's to me what I foresee as Soulblight. Maybe some Thralls, maybe something like that. But I'm not looking at the rules that Vince is talking about for this vampires. I'm more thinking about your traditional Death Rattle, your Dead Walkers, your Manfred, your Arcans, your Neferatas.
Yeah, and what I would argue is that I think the Mortar, I think two of the Mortarks will show up in this book. So I think Neferata's and I think Manfred's armies will be in this new book. I don't think that they will be separate in a Legions 2.0 book. I think they will be the heart of the vampire book itself.
You could argue that Prince Vordry is going to be in that as well.
I think he probably will. Although, again, let me state, I think that I think we will see, and so when I'm saying this, I'm wanting to differentiate because I think that what we have coming is going to be very vampire centric, and it could still have skeletons in there.
Sure.
So please hear me. But I think, and so what I'm hearing you guys talk about, I think it may even be split apart even more than what you guys have talked about. I think you're talking about another book that's not what's coming.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Okay.
No, I would agree. I think I'm talking about Legions of Nagash, and then we separate Soulblight into whatever it might be, Vampire Counts 2.0. But the necrotic magic that Vince is talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of these units aren't going to be in it. There won't be synergies like we're talking about. I would personally struggle to see a lot of zombie stuff in a vampire army. They're just things you don't see in classic horror.
Agreed. I could see skeletons. I don't know that I could see zombies.
I can see gargoyles. I can see these direwolves. Yep. I can see these things. That's what comes into my mind when I think of vampires. Yep. Heck, bring in the what's it called? Not the corpse cart. The thing that I can't take in Legions of Nagash. The
Coven Throne, or the other one.
Black Coach.
The Black Coach has a
vampire inside it.
Correct. So I can see I can see that in there. But there's a lot of stuff like the Mortis engine or the necrotic stuff. And you look at Legions of Nagash, it is clearly separated. You've got the lore of vampires, you've got the lore of necromancy. So that's probably where I see the differences between what's coming and what we currently got.
Okay. No, fair. All right. What else do we need to talk about? I mean, because assumingly if we're rewriting all this, the army's now working completely different, right? So what else? Let's bring this to a close here soon, okay? Yeah. But I want to talk about the fundamentals. What are the elements? Because this army, Legions of Nagash, and again, you can look at this through how you think a new book's going to play, or how the eventual Legions book, because Tom, you're saying they're two separate things. Super cool. I'm fine with that. But what are the fundamentals of how Legions needs to play to be competitive? What doesn't it have? What's its play style? How is it working? How is it being competitive? Because we can't just say, well, it returns models, hence it wins. Right? That's not an argument. Does that make sense?
No, I mean, for better or worse, to me, it seems like this army needs to be an attrition army that is focusing on, and as much as this sounds terrible, and Vince, I know you're going to poo-poo this, it needs to be a debuff-heavy attrition army.
Okay. That
wins by grinding down the opponent.
Okay.
To me, that's what this army is. It is the inevitable defeat of just grinding on an unending hordes. That's why I don't think vampire I don't think Blood Knights have a place in this army.
Okay.
I would go on to even say I could see vampires being in the army, but they're not the heart of the army. The heart of the army is things that have been raised by outlandish magic, like necromantic magic.
Okay.
And raised and sustained. Does that make sense? And
sure.
So vampires don't fit into that. And that's why I think that it gets split off, is because vampires are about sucking sustenance from the enemy.
Sure.
And so I would see a lot of like unit healing and unit restoring, but not a lot of unit replacement, where I could even see unit replacement with this type of like mass horde body, thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I would create some differentiation.
Coach, what about you?
As we've talked through this show, I think my opinions have slightly changed. And, hearing your feedback and your thoughts from both of you, I can see different things. And what we're talking about reminds me, if we did this show 20 years ago in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, I think 4th edition, when the Undead Army book was split into Tomb Kings and Vampire Counts, because back then your mummies, your zombies, your Tomb King stuff was all in this encompassing book. And then they split it out to be 2 distinct books with 2 different play styles, and they didn't synergize. And I wonder if that's what's going to happen is we have this new version of a book, which is our vampire type book. And then what is left is our necromancy based book. And it's through that lens, you've got Manfred and Neferata, who are more vampire, over onto the Soulblight Vampire Counts book. And on the other side, which is your necromancy side, is your Nagash, is your Arcane, is your Skellies, your zombies, your reanimates, your Morghasts. And it's splitting those 2 out and making those 2 very distinct. If I think of a play style of maybe what this new vampire counts might look like, I'm going to get in trouble here, but I think of Bretonia. I think of fast cavalry, shock troops, some basic peasants maybe to be there to hold the line or to be a screen, and these vampires just running up the board and just trying to get into your face in a formation as quick as possible. Whether they have a trebuchet or not, it's up to you, but that's kind of how I see maybe the new vampires working. But maybe it's because I'm fixated on Soulblight and the Blood Knights, maybe not necessarily what might also come.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like pirates.
Yeah, like if we had pirates or something, some type of pirates or some ethereal type thing, then you get, deep striking, sideboarding, that type of thing. But for me, if I think about just putting my Soulblight on the table as they currently stand, it does feel Bretonian-esque without the different levels of, Grail Knights and Lady of the Lake type stuff and, Leon Karab. Like that to me would be sweet in a vampire army.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So as I'm thinking about this and how I'm wanting to do, how I would want to design this army, right? I think of, in my mind, I think about how successful, like the Soulblight that you're both describing, an elite, fast, hard-hitting, sort of monster cav, whatever we want to call them, elite force, big guy army. We all know those have been nothing but successful in AOS, and that the template for successful armies is built on the back of armies that look just like this. Units of 5, 3 or 4 wound models that go fast and hit pretty hard and are moderately defensive. Boy, that is how you win AOS.
Yep.
And obviously all of this that I've been saying is sarcasm. Okay.
Of course.
Because those are in fact the worst armies. Every one of them. Down the board. Okay? So you gotta do more than that. Right? The sort of elite army that you're talking about that can win, that's called Iron Jaws.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Where we've got 5 wound pigs racing across the board at blinding speeds, hitting like Mack trucks. You know what I mean? Just with a brick on the pedal. Okay?
Right.
Backed up by like a mega boss on Maw Crusher doing 40 wounds when he smashes into something.
Right. Which I could see with Blood Knights and Zombie Dragon. Velocitus.
Yep. Sure. So my point was to set the offensive level, right? I would also mention that that army does have a teleport that's quite useful, that they can sometimes cast once in a while.
Sure.
And and also has a very scary anvil unit that can do a decent amount of damage in Ardboys, right?
Now, okay, so imagine that. So pigs that are on a 3-up save in self heal.
Sure, that's like yes, sure. Uh, the trick is the unit you're describing is different than what pigs are, right? Pigs are cheap. It's a 2-to-1 ratio here. I
Right.
get 30 wounds of pigs for 15 wounds of blood knights in the game right now. I mean, basically.
Are they Vanguard or are
Right.
they?
And that's
like,
what I was saying. Yeah. Yep.
Right. So the problem is if you want to make these vampires as like as offensive as it feels like they need to be, and as defensive as they feels like they need to be, and regenerating and whatever,
They're Varangard.
then they're Varangard and they're bad. Okay? Because the only place Varangard work is in Knights of the Empty Throne, where they're also heroes. All right? In which they're actually pretty good.
Maybe these are heroes.
Yes. See, now we're getting somewhere, Tom. Okay? One, this is why we need the other units, because we need like some kind of Ardboy thing.
Right, which I'm okay with there being skeletons or like bats or wolf packs or all of the things that you would expect.
I don't just need chaff, I need an anvil. Okay? And so, like, the only way we're getting around that is if the chaff is so regenerating chaff, and that's how that it becomes an anvil. Right? Then you've got to turn the regeneration up to anvil levels. And I would also point out that like Blood Knights aren't even close in the realm of speed to something like a pig, right? I mean, it's not even in the same universe of speed.
Well, not right now, but it's not like they're going to stick the same scroll.
That's my point. You'd have to. That's what I'm saying. Like you'd have to turn them up that far, right? The reason this can work. So, what I'm saying is, if it ends up being like some kind of soul blight focused thing, all right, then they can't have just the super hyper elite 300 points for a unit vampires unless yes you make them Varangard and you learn from that and basically you make them heroes. Right? If they're like hero units, maybe you have like 2 types of Blood Knights, like a hero unit of Blood Knights and a normal unit of Blood Knights, or whatever. Right?
And if you went down that route, you could tap into 40k coherency, where you have maybe they can be within 3 inches of each other instead of 1. There's a lot of different things you could play around with going down that way.
Sure, absolutely. And because otherwise this army is just going to have fundamental challenges. We can't keep handing out the ogre rule to everybody, right? So like we've got to have some other solution there, right? Slaves to Darkness get away with Chaos Knights because they've also got packs of 40 dumb marauders charging around at lightning speed, getting hyper synergistically buffed, and then murdering things, and then being fine and standing there and being their captured guys, right? Meanwhile, and then you're like, it's a very, very synergistic army. Whereas, which is innately more powerful than shoving all that power into the unit on the scroll.
Yeah, but like I think about like, so what were the test rules? Let's tease this out. What were the test rules for the vampire, the Soul Blight Allegiance in the GHB like 2 years ago?
I don't know. It's the bloodline stuff, right? It'd be the blood dragons and all the rest of that crap.
Right, and it gave for example, it made all your knights like increased
plus
movement
2
and
inches
fly.
move and fly. I think was what it was off the top of my head. If you went with that build.
Yeah, you got Dragon Warrior, which allows you to re-roll hit rolls of 1. You've got the Lords of Night, which there's 4 different ones with Swift Deck, Necromancer, Lords of Night.
That might be what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Let me venture to say. And so, like, depending on where you slot in, depends on what happens to your vampires and how they get buffed and how they change.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah, I think Bloodlines is something that people, if it wasn't in the book, I think people would be disappointed for anyone who is expecting that type of thing. So it just allows you to have that little minor tweak to your thing.
I mean, if they do a Soulblight focused book in any way, if there's vampires in any way, if that's what this ends up being, as opposed to a broader thing, and even if it is a broader thing, which I'm arguing you'd have 2 vampiric type factions, okay? one focused on combat and one focused on magic, probably, or whatever.
Right. Right.
In the book that I'm envisioning,
Right.
uh, there would you would still have, uh, like, you're still going to need to have all this other stuff. And people have said, what about vampires on foot or thralls? Sure. I mean, I don't know what their new sculpts could be. Could they do vampires on foot? Sure, I guess. But again, that kind of like Stormcast elite infantry is not great. Like, it's problematic infantry.
Historically, that type of thing has not won games.
No, like, the problem is it's in a bad design space right now because they don't. It's sort of the worst of both worlds, right? It doesn't have the bodies and it doesn't tend to actually pay for its differential. Like, they're not twice as good as the one guy. Yeah, in general, that's the problem. So you're not actually getting. You're getting 1.5 the guy out of what everybody else is just getting 2 guys for.
Right.
Now, could they correct that? Sure. Justin says, do we know for sure we're getting a vampire faction late to this train? And I'm very excited if we are. We believe there is, like, yes, there is a new death faction coming. We are 99.9% sure of that based on, like, all of the rumor engines, the thing they said in the video, the spoiler images we've seen, all of that. Right. So, is it going to be completely vampire focused? That's a subject of some argument. Although I think everybody here believes there will be new Blood Knights and probably some kind of vampire. Because vampires are just the leadership of the thing. They're the most interesting part of it. So it's probably going to be some major component of it. Yep. Either the whole book or a major component of it.
Right. And with the seemingly vampire focused pirate stuff.
Yeah.
Like what we've had with the warband, like it just seems like that's the direction they're leaning.
Yeah. So my ultimate argument is that I think if you did the Soulblight thing, the Soulblight focus thing, the challenge with it is you have a much more difficult time unless it's like a lot of Soulblight and friends with the army. If it's just sort of vampire stuff and only some of their very weak chaff that they bring around with them, it's going to be a weird army for them to write, play, balance rules around, etc. If it's this is why I said my belief of it is that, yeah, Tom, I'm kind of talking about like Legions 2.0, but through the lens of like vampires heading this stuff up, being the big ballers in charge.
Which I don't disagree, but I still think that it feels like you're minimizing. Like I really think that how do I want to say this? I think that we will have a vampire-centric book coming this spring.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it will have chaff that's not vampires.
Agreed.
But I don't think that will be a major part of the book in any way, shape, or form. And I think that ultimately the answer to Legions of Nagash for units like the Mortis Engine.
Sure.
For units like the Corpse Cart and Zombies. I don't think that's in this book. I think those War Scrolls are in limbo until we get a final release. That's what I'm going to say.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. But my point is, in my mind, the way that this would win is by, again, the reason I like the all-in book is because it gives you the most variance to your build types. If it looks more like a broader number, if it looks more like a broader force, they can build this S2D kind of thing I'm trotting out and have, like, this is your more melee focused one, and this is your more caster one, and this is your more monstrous leader focused one, or whatever, right? Whatever the things that you see as being the archetypical builds, it gives them more space to do that.
What I'll say is this: Flesh Eater Courts did a whole lot with very little.
Yeah, sure, you're not wrong. By being broke as a joke for a lot of their initial creation.
But no, they have like what, 4 temples, one's all the foot guys, one's all the flyers, one's all the big ghoul guys, and one's all the big monsters.
I mean, in simplest terms, sure.
I mean, like that's, and so, and with a handful of kits as well.
Yep.
And so I think that realistically you could have a Soulblight book with that type of variability, with not too many kits, reusing what we currently have and a handful of releases.
Direwolves. Dire Wolves, Fargeist, your Blood Knights. If you had 2 varieties of Blood Knights, potentially Vamp Lord, Zombie Dragon. Let's say you had Vordry, Neferata, Manfred. Let's say that there is a new hero, or maybe let's say there's a new battle
sure.
line.
Sure.
That could be up to 10 before you bring in skeletons or zombies.
Right. And that if they really wanted to, don't think zombies are going to be in here. Because again, I don't think vampires don't let squishy things like that's not what they do. Like they drain squishy things as a nation. So they have lots of bones left over. They don't have a lot of meat left over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so
And Coven
I
Throne,
think,
by the way, Coven Throne. We've got the Coven Throne with the female vampires on top.
yeah.
And the
And the
Palanquin.
Sanguine,
There's 2 builds of that. There's both the Palanquin and
Of course, the Palanquin as well. Yeah.
Yep. And so I think that what you end up with is an updated vampire line with a handful of new kits. And I actually honestly think that both the skeletons and Graveguard could come into the new book.
Sure. I mean,
and I
by
think
including them, you naturally take away from the soul blight nature of it if they're not synergistic in any way, or only in very minimal ways.
Well, I think that they have the keyword. I think keywords will be based on like whatever the sub factions are.
Sure.
And like they are inherently the minions and chaff. Like I think that's how this is going to play out. You have them and maybe one is more skeleton focused. Maybe the new Lamnia like faction underneath Neferata is more skeleton focused, and the other one under Manfred is more bat and bat and direwolf focused.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, my answer is I want to see them go a direction where the armies feel like they're doing unique things, not just like they're made of these models because this is kind of the models, right?
Well, and I think it would go both. Like, I think it could. Like, I think they're going to be doing unique things, and I think that will dictate how you play. And what I mean by that is, like, I can imagine the knight being a lot more ambushy, a lot more mobility, a lot more surprise. Where I could imagine the new Lamnia, being more rank and flank blocks and all that stuff. I don't know. I mean, like I could see because skeletons are going to fight differently than bats and wolves.
Yeah, here's my argument. Okay, here's you want to see, like, I think, again, I'll trot out my vision of this, right, which is sort of like, yes, to answer my wife, yes, I have mentioned Bone Daddies multiple times. At any rate, here is my argument, and then let's bring this to a close, and I'll let you guys have some final say. But here's my argument. This is going to be a Legions 2 of sorts, with kits gone, and the way you're going to build it, and the way that it'll play, is such that vampires will still be the leaders of your army, and the types of vampires you use in charge will define, because you just mentioned all these, right? All these different vampire forces that are out there, and a lot of them are different types of heroes. So a Vordry Manfred warrior type vampire faction is going to, like, the bloodlines manifest in this kind of a way, right? Through these different things.
Right.
But it still contains everything else. And those still have synergies through that. It is Legions of Nagash. We're just jettisoning the dumb ideas. It's the remake of the thing. The only things we're cutting out are literally the few old kits that are just too old to keep making. Okay? And the vampires are, for the most part, the leadership. Right? And that's how it gets defined. One as a playstyle, and I think you're going to see the new units, like I mentioned, you want an Ardboys equivalent. You want to pick for that? Golems or werewolves?
Sure.
You want a new harrying, flying, fast attack unit that like actually gets in there and does some work? That's like your gargoyles or your new bats or whatever.
Dire bats or whatever they want to call them.
Yeah. Right? That's where you build these new things. That's what those become. And they're more or less synergistic with the individual build and what it's trying to do. A la the way we've seen them steer into sub-factions recently. That's how you build this and you stay in the Gothic horror. My point is, just restricting it to a Soul Blight tome is too thin, because then you've got to explain these 10, 15, 20 other kits you allowed in, because you're going to have to, that aren't just vampires. Okay? And it's like, if it's just like Soul Blight and Friends on the cover, if it's Soul Blight Friendship is Magic, right? Then like that just doesn't feel as it's not telling the right story. That's not what this book is. It's
unless it's Vampire Kingdoms.
Hey, sure. Okay, fair enough. All right, final thoughts from you guys. Tom, give me your final thoughts, and then we'll give Coach the last word, and then we'll call it a night.
Yeah, I think that we there's a lot of good opportunities coming up for Death players. That's what I want to say. Sure. I think that vampires are going to be the center of whatever is coming, whether that is primarily a Soul Blight majority vampire army or whether it is a vampire-led army. I think both of those are perfectly like defensible calls. I think that and I think they're going to be sweet kits.
I definitely agree with that. No matter what, I think we can all agree that whatever these new kits we're getting are going to be super sweet. And I am still hoping that whatever vampire new stuff we get, I want to see some vampirates. Coach.
So we've talked a lot. We've talked a lot about some different things. If I think about the two topics, the first one we had was fixing Legions of Nagash. And I think we've come up with some really good ideas, removing the shackles that was Age of Sigmar 1 to bring them in line with Age of Sigmar 2, whether it is Slaves to Darkness, Cities of Sigmaring it, whether it is removing the restrictions on things like gravesites and the incentives to build certain ways based on Mortarchs. And I think we've brought up some really cool ideas that I'd be really happy to see. From what I'm expecting from Soul Blight, let's call it Soul Blight or Vampire Counts or Vampirates, whatever it is. I tend to agree that I'm not convinced that there's going to be enough kits released to make it a full faction. My gut feeling is it's more like a Legion of Grief or a Harkuron or some type of bolt-on that will eventually kind of see a revisited Legions of Nagash within Age of Sigmar 3. I think it's too early to revisit and fix Legions now. In saying all of that, I think there's some cool stuff happening. I agree. It's a good time to be a vampire or just a death player. The other idea that we haven't really spoken about, and thank you very much to my homie Vinny, was we've seen in Cities of Sigmar another rule that I really like, which is the 1 in 4.
Sure.
1 in 4 can be brought in, and maybe that's the way we solve it. 1 in 4 could be from Legions of Nagash in Soul Blight. So that's how we bring in the skeletons, the necromancers, the other things, while staying true to Soul Blight.
Sure, Arcan's Legion could have 1 in 4 from OBR or something. Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. We know that they're allies, so 1 in 4 could be a catapult. I was going to call it a screaming skull. That's how old school that. But you know what I mean? Like, I think it's an awesome time, and whatever comes, it's a good time to be a death player. And because most of these books are so old, just bringing some of these new concepts that we've explored in other books is just going to make this a great army. So dust off those models, go buy some kits. I've been watching my Manfred for the last 3 hours, and I'm just like, I can't wait to get Manny back on the table. So
sure. No, I'm excited that they got to be one of the last 1.0 books, and now they'll probably be one of the last 2.0 books. So that'll be exciting for them. Hopefully the move to 3.0 is a lot smaller and less impactful. So there you go. All right, gentlemen. Well, this has been a good discussion. I hope we gave some good ideas there. If you all out there have your own ideas, please drop them in the comments. I think there's so much room for exploration here, right? There's so much untapped things like that you could do with all of these, because there's so many scrolls and such a cool idea and so much behind this and history and tradition and blah, 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 blah. What new units do you hope to see? All that kind of stuff. Drop it down in the comments. Don't forget to hit like. Really appreciate everybody guys so far. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Coach, thank you very much, sir. Absolute pleasure to have you back on.
No, thank you for allowing me to discuss death.
That's right. A beautiful, beautiful sword you've got there. All right, for all of you out there, thank you so much for watching. And as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.